Good afternoon. I will call this meeting of the California Strategic Growth Council to order, echo and all. Justine Massey, Special Projects Analyst, will lead our roll call. Justine.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Vice Chair Frank Cardenas.
Here.
Senior Deputy Director Abby Edwards.
Here.
Deputy Secretary Darwin Musavi.
Here.
Secretary Yana Garcia.
Here.
Chancellor Juan Sanchez Munoz.
Present.
Deputy Secretary Sasha Kurgan. Are currently present. Farm Equity Advisor Thea Rittenhouse.
Here.
And Chief Equity Officer Daniel Torres.
Here.
And Deputy Secretary Noaki Schwartz.
Here.
Oh, great.
Good. We have a quorum?
We do.
Excellent. Justine, we now share our procedures for public comment.
So thank you, Vice Chair, and thanks to everyone joining us today, in person, online, or by phone through the Zoom webinar platform, or where the meeting is being live streamed on SGC's YouTube channel or CaliPA's live webcast. I will provide some information to help guide us all through the processes for this hybrid meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. In order to minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute your phone yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform does not enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you are using the online Zoom webinar, the best way is by using the Q&A function. Several members of the SGC team are monitoring the Zoom Q&A function to facilitate public access to the council meeting and may remove disruptive or threatening content. If you have joined by phone and you have access to email, please email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. If you do not have access to email, you may text or call 916-634-3359. If you plan to make in-person public comment, you must fill out a comment card provided at the table near the back of the room. Please fill out the comment card to indicate your name and which item you would like to comment on. Please bring your comment card to the table, again at the side of the room, where they're collecting public comment cards. When the Vice Chair opens the public comment period for your item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for that item. When the names have been read, please line up by the podium in the order in which you were called. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name to the podium. If you plan to make remote public comment, you must be joining the meeting via Zoom, either through your desktop or phone app, or by calling in by phone. To make a public comment, visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form linked there. You will need to complete separate forms for each item on which you wish to speak. You may complete a form at any time prior to the beginning of the public comment period. When the chair opens the public comment period for your item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for that item. When you hear your name in that list, please raise your hand. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, click Raise Hand under the Participants menu. Find that at the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand by phone, please press *9. When it is your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you are online, you will see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you. You will need to click the option to approve unmute. After that, you can begin your comment. If you are on the phone, you will hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. Please begin your comment after you hear the recorded message. If you are unable to complete the online form but would like to make a public comment, please email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. Final piece here. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. A timer will be screen shared. Please monitor the timer and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, you will be notified when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action once we mute your microphone. Thank you all for your participation, and I will hand it back to you, Vice Chair.
Justine, thank you very much. We retain a quorum with the addition of our distinguished Deputy Secretary of the state's Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency, Sasha Kurgan. We have now item number 3, which is the approval of this body's most recent meeting, which was April 30 of this year. As a reminder, members, we need not have been present at this meeting to vote to adopt the minutes of this meeting. One may always abstain. We will have an opportunity for council discussion and then public comment.
So I believe we'll take the roll call vote on the minutes at this point. Vice Chair Cardenas?
Are there any questions or comments on the minutes?
No questions.
Entertain a motion and a second for the minutes.
Happy to move to
Second.
adopt the minutes.
Move and second by the secretary and the secretary. Roll call?
Vice Chair Cardenas?
Yes.
Senior Deputy Director Edwards?
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Mosavi?
Yes.
Secretary Garcia?
Yes.
Chancellor Munoz?
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Kurgan?
Yes.
Farm Equity Advisor Rittenhouse?
Abstain.
Chief Equity Officer Torres?
Yes.
And Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right. And just to clarify, Justine, there was no public comment on that, on the minutes?
Correct.
Ready for item number 4. Welcome, everybody. This is a great meeting of the Strategic Growth Council today. We have some very special items, some very important reports, and we have some amazing guests who are here with us to share the work that they've been doing on behalf of Californians throughout the state. We begin, as we normally do, with a report from our Executive Director, Aaron Curtis. Aaron?
Thank you, Vice Chair Cardenas, very much. And before I begin today, I would like to give the floor over to Secretary Yana Garcia at Cali, PA, who has some comments to make.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the time and the space, Vice Chair and Director Curtis. I'm going to take just a little bit of time to share some rather sorrowful news for us at Cali, PA, and for many of you. I know some of you may be learning this for the first time, but it is with deep sorrow that I share the devastating news that our dear friend and colleague Sabine Tologan has passed away. Many of you may have worked with her, as I did, in her capacity as Deputy Secretary for Intergovernmental Relations at Cali, PA. In this role, she worked tirelessly to represent underserved communities, from reaching across the border to identify solutions to pollution in the Tijuana River, advocating against harmful federal policies, stripping away critical federal funding for programs protecting communities and the environment, to building collaborative relationships between tribal, federal, state, and local governments, to, for example, save the Clear Lake Hitch, and working collaboratively with Native American tribes to bring back traditional ecological knowledge and tribal stewardship to our lands and our waters. Sabine's efforts did not begin in state service with Cali, PA. In fact, she spent much time at state parks, and I want to mention a couple of the accomplishments there as well. While she was at state parks, she established the State Parks MOU program to remove barriers tribes faced in accessing and managing their ancestral lands and sacred sites within the state park system. She navigated complex tribal, federal, and state jurisdictions and policy to establish a pathway for California to respect tribal sovereignty and the use of cultural fire as well. Sabine overall will be remembered as a collaborative and warm colleague, a mission-driven team player, and someone who spoke her mind and pushed always for what is right. As a queer Chumash woman, she took on the responsibility to dedicate her career to standing up for injustice, to right historical wrongs, strengthen tribal sovereignty, and support urban and rural Native communities across the state. As a manager, she built teams of people who she mentored and supported, helping to build future generations of strong leaders to continue this important work. As a colleague, she was incredibly strategic, thoughtful, and brought joy to her work. As a friend, Sabine loved deeply and always showed up when you needed her. I'm someone who had the privilege to work closely with her, to hear her laugh from one door down, and to care deeply for her. I share in the pain that so many are feeling, and I offer my deepest sympathies to those grieving at this time and across our community. If I may, I'd like to take a moment of silence in her honor. Sabine will be deeply missed. And I know she would want everyone in this room to take a moment to reflect and identify opportunities in your space to make the world safer and more welcoming for all. Thank you again, Vice Chair. Thank you again, Director Curtis, for the moment to take to remember Sabine.
Secretary Garcia, muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for that very moving tribute. We join you in mourning, but also celebrating the life of Deputy Secretary Tulugan.
Thank you, Secretary and Vice Chair. I will move on with the Executive Director's report now. We will move on and talk about some staffing updates within the Strategic Growth Council. I'm happy to share that we have 5 members of our staff who have been promoted from within, or 4 rather, and we have hired a new member of our staff. We have pictures of them up on the slide. Mel Moyce joined SGC as the Energy Policy Specialist for SGC's energy investment portfolio. Brianne Lugasa has been promoted to Resilient Community Senior Planner for our Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program. Jessica Eisen has been promoted to Resilient Community Senior Planner for our Transformative Climate Communities program. Dora Montrosa has been promoted to Resilient Community Senior Planner for our Community Resilience Centers program. And Jessica Cervantes has been promoted to Resilient Community Senior Planner for our Community Resilience Centers program as well. So if Jessica, Dora, Jess, Brianne, and Mel are here, if they could just wave. They're all hiding. Okay. Congratulations. We're very honored and pleased to be able to promote from within. We are also, if we move to the next slide, saying goodbye to a couple of our staff members. Jessica McCool, who has been a Resilient Community Associate Planner with our Community Resilience Centers program, is taking a position with the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. So Abby has stolen her as part of the 5th Climate Assessment Program, but we are happy that Jess is not going too far. And we do have to say goodbye at the end of this month to our Civic Spark Fellow, Kenna Davis. This is her last week of a year-long fellowship that she has, that we have been honored to have her as a part of our staff. She's worked on several initiatives during her fellowship, including virtual power plants, our factory-built housing initiative, and an infill housing report in response to the governor's executive order N224. We are very grateful for Kenna's time with us and wish her the best in her future endeavors. Kenna, are you here? See, she is here. There we go. All right, next slide, please. I wanted to give you a quick report out on the 3rd Catalyst convening that we held in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our Connecting Communities team partnered with LCI and Abby's staff to host our 3rd Regional Catalyst convening in early July in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were in San Jose. We had nearly 150 regional leaders from local, regional, and state government, philanthropy, nonprofits, and higher education in attendance. It included a case study presentation, a little bit different this time, from East Oakland's TCC project, which is called Better Neighborhoods, Same Neighbors. That project is a community-led initiative to prevent displacement and address climate resilience, housing, and economic justice in East Oakland. So takeaways from that case study included the importance of engaging with longtime residents in a community as you are designing and implementing a project, as well as getting creative around stacking funding and piloting scalable solutions. So we were able to bring case studies in, and others are able to learn from it. SGC and LCI are posting updates for our Catalyst convenings online. We include event summaries and regional background reports, which are very informative. And you will hear more today about the impacts of these convenings. So stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. Lots of milestones hit in the last few months with our Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program. In June, we celebrated the investment of more than $4 billion in cap and trade funds overall with the ASIC program. We've added more than 22,000 affordable climate resilient homes in communities statewide, which I think is a milestone worth talking about and celebrating. That has all been implemented in partnership with the Department of Housing and Community Development. And the program supports thriving communities and reduces emissions by investing in projects that build affordable housing near transit. So over the past 10 years, again, some milestones to celebrate. The ASIC program has invested in 210 projects in 34 counties and 85 cities across the state. And we've incorporated clean mass transit, electric vehicle charging stations, upgraded walking and biking routes, all incorporated into affordable housing plans. And residents of these new homes now have greener and cheaper ways to get to where they need to go: work, school, healthcare appointments, shopping, etc. So far this summer, I've actually been at 3 grand openings for new ASIC projects. And together, just those 3 projects have added almost 230 homes in California. We have a couple of pictures up on the slides for you to see, lots of ribbons being cut. The Escalante Meadows grand opening in the city of Guadalupe, which is the northernmost part of Santa Barbara County. It's a predominantly farm worker community, and where an aging public housing complex once stood, now we have a new community with 80 affordable homes, 1 to 4 bedrooms, and they're safer, much more convenient transportation options. There's an Amtrak station down the street. And there is also a beautiful new community center and childcare center that will be available to the residents as well as the community. It's a beautiful project. If you ever happen to be in Guadalupe, by all means, go. The Rick Judd Commons in Concord also held its ribbon cutting. There's a picture of it up there. That's the first affordable housing development in the city of Concord in over 20 years, and provides 62 new affordable apartments for small families and individuals in an amenity and transit-rich location. So that project connects the community to safe bike and pedestrian networks, urban greening, and a lot of transit-related amenities, including free transit passes. Included in that project, BART actually purchased 3 additional trains or cars. So it's expanding BART as well. And finally, the Model Miller Shrek Community Grand Opening in Berkeley occurred in May, and that project added 87 new affordable homes and transportation improvements, including, again, 3 new heavy rail transit cars for BART. And that also included a 2-way cycle track at the nearby Ashby BART station and a new Class 3 bike boulevard. That project, the Model Miller Shrek project, was developed in coordination with Healthy Black Families and is named in honor of an influential civil rights leader from the neighborhood. Move on to the Salk project. There's a picture on the slide here of a recent Salk celebration. The Land Trust of Santa Cruz County and partners celebrated just earlier this month the conservation of the Estrada Ranch. This is 1,205 mountainous acres in the heart of the Pajaro Hills in Santa Cruz County. It's a working ranch, and it is now protected in perpetuity as open working lands through a conservation easement through SALC. So it was funded in part with $3 million from our SALC program, which we administer in partnership with the Department of Conservation. And the Frank Estrada family will now keep the land in productive use while permanently protecting it from development. It's an absolutely beautiful piece of property, habitat for endangered and threatened species. And 5,800, it connects with 5,800 acres of contiguous protected open space now in that area. Next slide.
Hey, Aaron, can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
The family gets to keep their acreage,
Right.
gets a working ranch, and maybe enriched by 3 million. Why wouldn't more private families or holders of the acreage find this appealing? I mean, is it essentially long-term, 20 years from now, your great-grandkids can't theoretically develop this property, right? But, I mean,
That's true. It's also true that the SALC program is very focused on lands that are at risk of development. This is a part of the AHSC program where we are trying to direct the development within cities and in infill development. And I don't know if Amar wants to address this any further.
It's a great question because I think this program has been working now into 10 years and we're seeing a lot more applications coming in for this. In the last couple of openings and conservations that Aaron has attended to, we heard other families that are considering applying to SALC and kind of really getting an understanding of what this actually means for them. So it is becoming more of a viable opportunity.
Yeah, this sounded a little cynical, so I apologize, Amar, but I would tell you, in my experience, like the grandfathers and the fathers and that sort of kept the land, they're less amenable to seeing it developed in that way. They want to keep it the way they found it. Generations later, you can't control this, particularly if you're not among the decision makers. So I think that in the sort of the cynicism is that maybe a different generation that maybe didn't have to work to get it right, and might feel differently about the attachment to the land and the preservation in its original condition than people that are holding it right now and see the beauty and the scarcity and the rarity of it and say, this is what I want it to be for as long as I can, right? And so hearing about it just seems like a very good way to preserve the land. And so I'm not surprised that more people are maybe expressing an interest in doing that. So I apologize for the interruption.
Good. Thank you, Chancellor Munoz. We appreciate your support of the program. We can go to the next slide. All right, Transformative Climate Communities, an update on that. The South Fresno Transformative Climate Community Program was recently recognized by the US EPA as a model of success for redeveloping brownfields. So we just wanted to celebrate that here with you all. The St. Rest Plus Food to Share Hub was recognized as a national model for revitalization of contaminated or underused properties. Once home to a bakery, gas station, and meatpacking plant, the 6,800 square foot warehouse stood vacant for years due to contamination and structural decline. With $1.5 million in funding from Transform Fresno, a round one recipient of the TCC program, St. Rest Baptist Church led efforts to turn the site into a vibrant community food hub. The hub officially opened in May of 2024. It now serves as a food recovery and distribution center. It offers nutrition, education, cooking classes, and monthly markets. And it has created 51 local jobs and supports ongoing programs that improve access to healthy food for families in the region. And we're very proud that it has been recognized as a national model. So in June, I accompanied California Energy Commissioner Noemi Gallardo, SGC staff, and representatives from CAL FIRE and the California Ocean Protection Council at a site visit with the YTT Northern Chumash Tribe site visit near Morro Bay. This was an incredible opportunity. The YTT tribe is one of our grantees under the Tribal Capacity Building Program, and they're pursuing a land purchase to support an aquaculture project to cultivate abalone and seaweed, which offers sustainable access to traditional foods as well as economic development opportunities. A beautiful piece of property. And I understand that the tribe recently was able to continue to be an escrow for the property. So we appreciated the opportunity to check out that site. Slide. All right. Update on the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force. We've been holding meetings and engagement sessions throughout the summer. We continue to support that task force with our staff. They held 2 recent meetings and tribal engagement sessions associated with each of them. In May, they were at the Susanville Indian Rancheria, and earlier this month up at the Blue Lake Indian Rancheria near Arcata. We want to give out great appreciation to Chairman Hart of Susanville and Chairman Ramos of Blue Lake for hosting us, and to the tribal leaders and members who attended our engagement sessions and shared their valuable insight and expertise. Thanks also to the farmers who showed us around their beautiful farms in Arcata. So SGC staff and the task force members hosted several other community events across the state in July, including a tribal engagement session at the Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indians Golden Eagle Farm in Ramona, and conversations with farmers in Bakersfield and Allensworth. And just a reminder, the task force's report is due to the governor and the legislature at the end of this year. All right, next slide, last slide. Looking ahead, we are excited to announce that the draft guidelines for round 3 of our factory-built housing pilot program will be released for a 30-day public comment period in early September. This pilot program aims to empower communities to scale innovative construction techniques that align with regional housing, climate, and workforce priorities. The draft guidelines public comment submission portal will be available on the SGC website. And finally, we are working closely with our partners at the Department of Conservation on the next round of those SALT grants, Chancellor Munoz, and we expect to award the next round by the end of this year. And that concludes my executive director's report, and I will turn it back over to Justine to make a reminder around public comment.
Thank you. So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form. I'll now pass it to Vice Chair Cardenas for any potential council discussion.
Justine, thanks very much. Many of us around the state, many people in this room may be particularly familiar with the Strategic Growth Council from whatever your particular area of interest and vocational professional work happens to be. I encourage anybody to take a look at the executive director's report, and I invite you to appreciate the range and the breadth of the work that Aaron's staff is involved in all across the state. There's a reason why this council is populated with various cabinet members and a couple of public members. It's because this is your government. These are your tax dollars. These are your public servants at work across the state, and a vast array of efforts to keep this state moving forward. It really is breathtaking. Congratulations and thanks to our staff. Members, any questions or comments about the executive director's report? Seeing none, shall we, this is an informational item, is that right?
That's right. This is an informational item, and there does not appear to be any public comment for this item. And so the public comment period for this item is now over, and I'll pass it back to you, Vice Chair Cardenas, and we can move to the next item.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5 on our consent calendar. The first item on our consent calendar is the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation update. I'll pass it over to Ms. Curtis.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cardenas. So on the consent calendar today, we have Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Guidelines Technical Amendment. In the last round of SALT guidelines, staff prepared the guidelines with the intent to govern multiple funding years, as the program comments have stabilized over the last 10 years and the need for major revisions to those guidelines has decreased. So with this round of technical amendments, the program is aligned with updated requirements in the California Climate Investments Funding Guidelines. These updates include bolstered language for reducing burden and harm to priority populations, increased workforce development criteria, and advanced pay options. Other technical amendments include reporting requirements for the California Natural Resources Agency to support their 30 by 30 goals, removal of pre-proposal and application documents to be standalone and on the website, and clarification of previous technical amendments with restructuring of language pertinent to standalone appraisals subsection, which is on page 42 and 43. So should the council agree with the staff's recommendations, the following motion language is suggested, just moving that the council pass the consent calendar.
So I'll give another reminder for public comment. If members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form. Pass it back now to Vice Chair Cardenas.
Thank you, Justine. Members, any comments on the proposed guideline revisions on the consent calendar? I'll accept a motion consistent with the staff recommendation on this item. Second? Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Yes, and there's no public comment on this item.
Thank you.
So for roll call, Vice Chair Cardenas,
Yes.
Senior Deputy Director Edwards,
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Mosabi,
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Yvonne Chi,
Yes.
Chancellor Munoz, Deputy Secretary Kurgan,
Yes.
Farm Equity Advisor Rittenhouse,
Yes.
Chief Equity Officer Torres,
Yes.
and Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Yes.
Motion so passes.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. We are now moving on to item number 6. This is an informational item, but in saying that, I don't want to suggest in any way that this is not terribly important, because it is. This is an update on our Connecting Communities initiative here at the Strategic Growth Council. We are very privileged to have stewarding this initiative our Special Advisor of Innovation and Partnerships, Adrian Moretz. Adrian, will you be guiding our presentation here?
Yes, I will. And we're going to do a little bit of transition here at the table. So this is an informational item. I'm going to provide you with an update of progress we've been making with the Connecting Communities initiative. So no action for the council today. I'm joined up here with Dr. Amy Lerman and Hannah Jackson with UC Berkeley's Possibility Lab, and they're going to join me in presenting for part of the update. And before I begin, I do just want to take a moment to recognize SGC Connecting Communities summer intern Kevin Song, who's a master's student in computer science from Stanford. We were really, really lucky to have him support us this summer with the Connecting Communities initiative, and is in the room today, coming from San Jose. So
Adrian, I'm sorry, which University of California was that? What campus
gotta
was that?
represent. He's our Stanford intern. Last summer, we had great success too.
All right. Okay. Let the record reflect.
Okay, we'll move to the next slide, Lisa, please. As a reminder, Connecting Communities Initiative supports SGC grantees and SGC unawarded applicants in accessing funding pathways, and the initiative works to demonstrate proven strategies that advance community climate leadership. And the initiative sits within Goal 2 of SGC's strategic plan. Go to the next slide. We developed this initiative at the very end of 2023, really to build upon SGC's historical success in catalyzing public and private investment for our frontline communities. At the time, it was the way to address the continued ebb and flow of state and federal budgets. We were seeing really large amounts of federal dollars come in the Biden administration through the IRA and the Jobs Act. But at the same time, we're consistently facing chronic program oversubscription in all of SGC's applications. And there's just this real continued need to support and develop capacity across communities in applying for these programs. Next slide. Understanding all of that, there's many factors, of course, that impact the pathways to funding, as we've seen since the federal transition, and advancing climate leadership. So connecting communities was designed to evolve with these changes and really just to meet the need of community. Next slide. So in the summer of 2024, we brought to you at Council the initiative framework and the 3 goals that are on the screen and in the report presented for you today. The first goal is really about providing direct technical assistance and supporting applicants in identifying those funding pathways, especially focused on the federal level, but now focused on all levels of funding. The second goal is focused around strategic partnerships in and outside of state government, really working across private, philanthropic, and other entities to really enhance that investment and identify other ways we can support community. And the third goal is advancing those community-led projects, convening community where appropriate, and that's where our Catalyst convening sit that we'll speak on today. Next slide. So the update today will focus on progress to date in each of those 3 goals, where we're headed, given the shifting federal funding landscape, and we'll place a big emphasis on the Catalyst convenings, and we'll be joined with UC Berkeley on that 3rd goal. Next slide. So the first goal, again, focused on providing that direct technical assistance. In 2024, the initiative was very heavily focused on supporting applicants apply for federal programs, and we were quite successful in doing so. We supported about 75 different SGC partners and communities. We submitted over 30 federal applications. Towards the end of 2024 is when we saw the most success. We had about 6 of those funded. So we were able to leverage about $75 million in federal awards with this very small investment in technical assistance. Since January 2025, nearly all of those dollars have been canceled and rescinded. So we have been working with those communities, still less applying to new funds right now, but rather managing and dealing with the cancellation of these federal dollars. So that looks different for each community. Some we are supporting in grant compliance. Where communities still have federal dollars, it's really important to maintain that compliance. Even when federal accounts are locked out, if the grantees don't maintain compliance, there's justification to cancel that grant. So we've been working hard for communities that still do have funds to maintain compliance. Where communities have chosen to close out and not dispute, we've been working with them to close out the federal grants, make sure they have all of their documentation and invoicing, et cetera, prepared and ready. And then other communities have chosen to dispute. So throughout all of this, we've really been just educating ourselves, but also working with communities to share resources, education where appropriate, given that almost every day, to be honest, there's different news coming from the federal level about these funds.
Adrian, can I ask a question?
Sure.
75 million was withdrawn.
Yes, we had 1 or 2 grantees that still had their federal award. We learned last week that those were also terminated.
Okay. Immediately terminated, because part of the challenge is if you say a fictitious number, you're awarded 2.5 million. I start making expenditures. I encumber expenses, right? I spend 375,000, then I find out it's terminated. One is responsible for 375,000 on the expectation of, are there people that are falling into that category where they have encumbered expenses or obligated themselves and will not be reimbursed?
They still can submit invoices to be reimbursed. There's a 120-day closeout window that maybe I should preface that the majority of this I'm speaking about is US EPA. That was really where a lot of our support was focused. That program was modeled after our TCC program. That US EPA gave grantees a 120-day closeout window that actually closes this week. So they can submit invoices and get what has been expended covered. There have been complications with that due to the federal invoicing system being locked out at random
They
times.
close the portals. And
Yes.
a similar thing is happening in higher ed.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're really working to maintain compliance. So if you're not submitting invoices on time, for example, then you can technically be out of compliance. So we've been working hard to maintain that. But yes,
And some entities, some communities, some entities, some institutions have greater capacity to absorb that than others.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why we see some of the communities don't have capacity or the legal team to be able to support or litigate, dispute. So they've chosen closeout. It's very nuanced, honestly, very complicated for our partners, especially those who are tribal, smaller, don't have capacity, in-house legal, et cetera. There's just so many factors that are impacting all of the elements. And so things like this direct technical assistance is really important right now. Even though it's not application in nature, it's still supporting the community and figuring out pathways forward. So with that, if we'll go to the next slide, we'll talk about what we're doing moving forward, given the ever-changing environment. So there are still federal funding opportunities available, and we do have communities interested in those opportunities. And so where we have communities interested in applying for federal funds, we're working with them to make sure the language aligns with federal priorities. For example, emphasis on things like economic workforce development. And we're simultaneously identifying tools, resources, templates that we can provide to communities given this time where not as many opportunities are available to apply to. And so Kevin, our intern, and we have been working really hard this summer to do almost like a landscape analysis with SGC programs to identify what's needed right now. That's peer examples, that's additional matchmaking and identifying available grants. So beyond just general search, providing templates. And so we're working across SGC programs to develop some of that out right now. So although this goal is tumultuous at best, there's still a lot of ways we've been able to support and will continue to support our communities in identifying pathways and building capacity for programs. So that really relates to our second goal, which is about strategic collaborations. If we'll go to the next slide, Lisa. Connecting Communities has been collaborating across cross-sectoral partners. So this includes philanthropy, CBOs, peer governments, tribal communities, et cetera. A few examples of the work we've been doing across this goal. We still have a really strong relationship with the Milken Institute and facilitating our grant applicants and using their digital grant matchmaking tool. It's free for any community to use. That was developed as an outcome of the 2024 Catalyst Conference. We've been working with them to develop some California-specific elements of that tool and to really facilitate the matchmaking between projects and partners, whether that be philanthropy, private funding, open grant opportunities that are not state or federal in nature, et cetera. So I have our partnership with the James Irvine Foundation. We've been using that philanthropic grant dollars to support communities in convening and engaging. Some communities have been using those dollars to facilitate community outreach meetings that they don't have dollars for otherwise. And then finally, on our third goal, we'll go to the next slide, please. That's really about advancing community-led climate leadership. And this is where we have transitioned from the Catalyst conference to Catalyst convenings because we were consistently hearing the need for better collaboration, capacity building, accessible funding mechanisms. And so we have partnered with the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation and Abby's team on meeting those needs and developing the Catalyst convenings that we've been speaking about. So we'll go to the next slide. And Let me just quickly do a transition to our partners in planning these events. I really want to recognize UC Berkeley's Possibility Lab. Core to the outcomes of these convenings are really to develop a set of policy actions in each region. That's actions that SGC can use to inform our work, will inform our next strategic plan at SGC, and where there are opportunities to collaborate across state agency, we can elevate those to US Council. It really gets to SGC's process of ideating, incubating, and scale, which is core to our work. Same for Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation and collaborating together. And foundational to doing that are the workshops that UC Berkeley has been hosting as part of the convening. So with that, let me pass it to the team at UC Berkeley for the remainder of the presentation.
Sure. We're really excited to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing in partnership with SGC and LCI. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So at the Possibility Lab, our focus really is on creating an evidence base for doing civic engagement in a meaningful and sustained way, bringing communities in, particularly diverse voices, to the policymaking process and thinking about what we as policymakers can learn from communities who have different kinds of experience and expertise to bring to the table. And so one of the things that we're always thinking about is new models for how to bridge the gap between government and community when it comes to making good policy. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we've been doing that is through a model that we call Impact, which is really a framework for thinking about how government can partner with communities in a meaningful way that government and community can learn from each other. And Impact stands for Initiate, Mobilize, Plan, Act, Catalyze, Test. And it's a feedback loop, the idea being that over a period of time, communities can come together, learn from each other, and can partner with government in a way that changes how we think about policy. And the Catalyst convenings have been a great example of how California really is an innovator and a leader in the civic engagement space. And I think this project has been an incredible learning opportunity for the regions, for our state partners, and for us in how we can continue to move the ball and really model what this can look like for other departments and agencies who are interested in engaging with community partners in a more meaningful and sustained way. Next slide, please. So the Catalyst convenings we're sort of in the second phase. And just to give you a sense of how the framework has been developed over time, and I want to give just incredible gratitude to our partners who have been so enthusiastic to really think about how to bring community in at every step. So the Initiate process, we've been working to really think carefully about priorities and goals. We met with undersecretaries, other council delegates in November of 2024 to really think together about what the best case scenario for these convenings could be, how we could really leverage them to do something different, to try something new, and to really produce actionable intelligence, sort of policy ideas that could be elevated to the state and that could also be useful to the regions as they think about how to work together. We then went into the mobilize phase where we brought community members in to really think together with SGC and LCI about what the structure of the Catalyst convenings should look like. So from the very beginning, really thinking together, not just about the state doing something for the regions, but really being a partner in thinking about what the regions wanted from these convenings and how to make sure that they were really useful for all partners. We then moved into a planning process where we thought about what the actual structure of these convenings could look like, how we would structure the dialogue and deliberation that happened between people who came together at the convenings, and really thinking about how over the course of a day, we could move from understanding problems, thinking about opportunities and challenges, to really thinking about policy ideas and thinking about areas of consensus where policy ideas really had a lot of support and could be elevated to both across regions and to the state as a whole. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Hannah to just give you an idea of the kinds of the sort of thoughts and input that is coming from the convenings. We've done the first 3 of them. That's a very limited group. It's been mostly in the big cities at this point. And so just to caveat the initial findings to say that there's still a lot more to learn, and we're really eager to keep the process moving forward. But they've been very successful so far. The feedback we've been getting from participants is incredibly positive, and I think it has created great momentum for this kind of engaged work.
If we can move to the next slide, please. Great. Just to make this a little bit more concrete, we wanted to kind of show you a little bit about our process. Given all the feedback that we got in the first 3 stages of planning, we really, tried to understand what the regions need and how they think that these could be useful. So the first thing that we did is really ask people to characterize, in the region, how they see their own priorities, assets, and challenges. So during registration, they answered several questions. We then synthesized that information and put it in this table that you see here across the different levels of energy, climate, and land use. Using that information, we compiled the main themes that people wanted to discuss and people wanted to dive into more during the Catalyst convenings, which ultimately became the different topics for the tables. Once we got to the convening, people got to self-select into different groups and then work with that group to walk through the different stages of the policy making process or the policy action and recommendation process. So you'll see on the right here, this is our roundtable conversation guide, which I can show you a little bit more of on the next slide. So again, when I talk about those different stages of the policymaking process, the groups talked about envisioning the future. So for their specific areas, what does the ideal future state look like? Then they went into defining the problem, like what exactly is getting in the way of achieving that future vision, deconstructing the problem. What does this look like on the ground? How are people experiencing the problem in real time? Working together to brainstorm solutions. In the last exercise, we saw, people talking about their assets. So how are we leveraging things that the region has or the region are doing really well to solve some of the problems that we have? And then step 5 was develop recommendations. So really looking towards the work that they did in the previous steps and then creating proposed policy actions for both the state and region to consider. Next slides, please. And we do have some preliminary findings to share. Again, I think it's important to note that we've only done 3 out of the 9 so far, and these have been mostly larger in coastal regions. So we suspect kind of our findings to change over time and there to be more variation. But next slide. So far in the first 3 convenings, we've had over 500 individuals participate. Talking about those different table topics, we've had over 20 different land use and climate topics be addressed through the convenings, and then ultimately 150 plus policy actions generated. Next slide. And through these convenings as well, we've had really diverse representation across different sectors. Here you can kind of see a sample snapshot of everyone who was there, but we had government, community organizations, folks from the private sector and research. The most represented people at these convenings were state governments, local governments, and folks in the nonprofit sector. Next slide, please. And looking a little bit more at the policy actions that were produced, again, we had roughly 50 policy actions per region, resulting in over 152 so far and growing as we continue to do more of the convenings. And again, people are really mentioning that they think the state should take action on the several convenings, but we do have some mentions of the region as well. Next slide. And then looking at the goals, so how people are, seeing the policy proposals going into action, the first priority being funding access and capacity building, meaningful and equitable engagement, talking a lot about how to make clean energy transition a reality, and then talking a lot as well about the nexus between climate and housing. Great. And I'll turn it over to Amy to talk about kind of the last stage of our policy recommendation process.
So one of the things that we did at the end of each convening was to use a tool called POLIS, which is a digital tool that helps map consensus and divergence of attitude across large groups of people. And the idea here was to be able to take what was a large group of recommendations and really think about where there was consensus, opportunities to move things forward that had a lot of support among participants, as well as where there was divergence in attitudes towards these recommendations. So we could really start to map the landscape of where people's attitudes were on these policy actions. Next slide, please. So to just give you a sense of what this looks like, Polis is an open source tool. It's been used really widely in contexts like Taiwan. Taiwan used it actually to create their Uber and Lyft regulations and as a way to almost sort of crowdsource ideas and then have people deliberate on the digital platform about those ideas. So at the end of the Catalyst convening, we in real time input a set of statements that were the policy actions that came out of each discussion group. And then we asked everybody a set of questions and then took them to the Polis platform, where for every statement they could agree, disagree, or say pass or unsure. And the nice thing about Polis is in real time, it gives you feedback. And so we were able to talk through that feedback with the groups in the room. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense, in the Bay Area convening, about 106 people voted on these Polis statements. About 2,400 votes were cast in total across all of the recommendations. People also submitted a lot of statements. So in addition to the policy actions that came out of each group deliberation, people could submit their own statements on Polis and have other people respond to them. So about 83 statements were submitted in addition to the policy actions that came out of each group. And on average, each voter voted on about 22, 23 different policy actions. Next slide, please. The really nice thing is that Polis gives you a sense of sort of on average what kind of support or disagreement there is on each statement, but it also uses statistics and machine learning to cluster people so that you get a sense not just of what attitudes look like in general, but you get a sense of where there are clusters within the population that sort of have different preferences or priorities. And so as an example, the Bay Area convening had about 5 clusters, 3 of which were really meaningful. And those clusters, next slide, please, really center on priorities. So cluster A was really focused on innovation, on having support to try new things, to really push the boundaries of what can be done. B was a cluster that was really focused on funding and the availability of funding and the structure of that funding. And so digging into those recommendations, those policy actions had really clear sort of ideas about how to improve and streamline the funding process. And E was really about engagement. There was a lot of discussion across all 3 convenings about how to continue this kind of work of bringing communities in, how to make sure that at the local and regional levels, communities were playing a role in decisions that were being made about land use and climate. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, as we mentioned, we're really excited to move into the rest of the Catalyst convenings as we continue to refine the model and also to really think about the diversity across all of the different convenings and starting to think about what kinds of differences there are in the themes that emerge. We are starting the process of analyzing patterns, both within and across convenings, in both the context and content of what the deliberations look like at the individual tables, as well as the policy actions that come up. And then we're really excited to work with all of you to think about how we can make sure that everything we're learning from these communities can be useful to you all. We have these great partners at Strategic Growth Council and LCI to think about their strategic plan. But we want to make all of the data that's coming out as accessible as possible, both to the regions so that we can report back to people who participated so that they can use it, but also more generally, the input that we're getting is really rich and nuanced, and we're eager to figure out how to make it as accessible and as useful to you all as we can.
With that, just a final wrap up on the Catalyst convenings that we have committed to hosting convenings in some way, shape, or form in 9 regions across the state using the California 5th Climate Assessment region. So when we speak about going to 3 regions already, there are 6 more that we'll have this information from. And again, just emphasizing that, you know, SGC's mission and vision really lead to that process of us innovating and ideating on how we can collaborate across agency, but also with community and other partners to implement some of these action. And we'll be looking forward to the evolution of connecting communities given input from these convenings. So one more slide, please. Just talking about next steps, we're continuing to provide that technical assistance to community. That includes building out tools, templates, resources, identifying and navigating funding opportunities given our ever-changing environment, and then continuing to host the Catalyst convenings in our great partners at LCI. So with that, let me conclude and see if there are questions or comments, or I'll turn it back to the chair.
Adrian, thanks. Thanks very much. I'm going to turn it over to any council discussion, Justine, and then an opportunity for public comment, if we can do it in that order.
Yes, I'll
Colleagues.
just provide the reminder for how to submit public comment. Then we can have the council discussion, then we'll see what public comment there may be. So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meeting-events/council and complete the public comment form. Pass it back to you, Vice Chair.
Deputy Secretary Edwards.
Ooh, I like that title.
Promote you? Can I do that?
I think so. I don't know.
Let it be done.
I have a couple of questions. One for you, Adrian, and then one for Amy and Hannah. So Adrian, it was really cool to hear about the Connecting Communities initiative and all the stats at the top too of the presentation. I mean, it was a pretty short amount of time and a lot of people that you guys were able to reach. So that's really encouraging and exciting. One question that I had, I think it was on sort of the first goal, is are you finding in working with communities that have been impacted by the federal cuts that philanthropy is sort of showing up and filling some of those gaps in the opportunities that are available, or is that not something that you're seeing? And maybe you can't answer that, but I'm curious if there's some sort of what that is looking like.
Yes, with an asterisk. I think that there's direct and indirect support that philanthropy is providing, and we know this is true even outside of the federal environment with things like our capacity building portfolio that Faye leads. We know that philanthropy has stepped in to support some of the grants that lost funding through some of our other programs on the capacity building side. Through the Connecting Communities initiative, we have not seen philanthropy backfill funds. I think what we're hearing, philanthropy is more interested in partnership and how to work together. Some philanthropic organizations like the Irvine Foundation have geographic priority areas, specific elements like workforce development they're very focused on. And so we've been trying to build out that sort of relationship and collaboration with groups like the Funders Network, which is a consortium of philanthropy, to identify how we can start working together. I think it'll be less about the backfill of absent funds and more collaborating moving forward, given that philanthropy is definitely being tapped right now, and our federal environment is likely to look different for some time. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We're on the cusp of that. And from our perspective, that kind of front-end technical assistance capacity building is so important because that's how communities are then able to apply for funds, philanthropic, state, federal, or otherwise. And so that's where we've seen some emphasis on philanthropy.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And it's really great that, the biggest thing you're hearing from all the regional convenings is funding and capacity building. And that's exactly what this program is set up to do. So it's cool to see. So Amy and Hannah, my next question is, well, actually, we have Dr. Estes from the Racial Equity Commission here, and they have done a really good model of a lot of regional engagement, but then going back to the same places and sharing, this is what we've heard and this is what we've done with your feedback. And so that's something I would like for us to consider. I think a lot of people feel that they've given feedback and it kind of goes into a black box, and where does that go? And so I think that model of going back to the same place and saying, here's what we heard, here's what we did, information, here's what it informed. So just a note for future us, I think that would be a really good thing to do. Thank you for your presentations.
Thank you. Deputy Director Edwards, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, advice? Adrian, thank you very much for the.
I have one observation, Mr.
Chancellor.
I just appreciate the continued
use and acknowledgement of the importance of diverse opinions and representation, he said with emphasis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Munoz. Any other comments? Deputy Secretary Kurgan.
I won't be too negative. I think you said it really well, Adrian, just a changing federal landscape, but just want to commend you for resilience that you're bringing into this and the accountability that you're bringing of still staying connected to the goals that we talked about. And also, this is not a gotcha exercise. So thanks for letting us know how things are going. And I think it would be helpful, at least at a staff level, for us to stay connected and make sure that we can be supportive to you as you navigate this changing environment. And then one question for Possibility Lab. Kind of to Chancellor Munoz's point, thinking about ways that as we expand and, as Abby said, go back to communities to say, here's how we're working through this, will we have the opportunity to look at almost like a gap analysis of different stakeholders who weren't in the room? Capacity building, I don't think is like vernacular that speaks to everyone, right? And I'm not saying that we're being exclusive in how we're inviting people into this, but just is there a way for Polis or some of the other tools to kind of scan for voices that might have been missing or groups that could be absent? And I won't speak for Secretary Johnson. I know Dan is here, but Secretary Johnson in a prior meeting talked about, with these changes at the federal level, that government employees' access to community spaces will be different. And so there's a couple reasons why I'm asking about this question, but just wondering how your model or your approach might be able to tell us about who's not in the room.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's such an important question. And one of the things we think a lot about is who tends to be in the room. I think one of the goals of the impact model is really to think about how we do a better job bringing people in who aren't the likely stakeholders, who are always the people who show up, and trying to make it as easy as possible for people to engage. I commend the council for deciding, instead of hosting something in Sacramento, to really go to where people are, to make it easier for people to join, and not having to travel as far, and making sure that you're really making the meeting accessible, providing food so that people can come. But we're always thinking about how to recruit and really how to hear from people. I think the goal is for this to be an iterative process, to really think about how we show value, to Abby's point about really making sure that we're reporting back to the community why this is a valuable use of their time, and building trust over time that this is a sort of different process that's really seeking to make use of the input to really be a long-term partner, but collecting data and making sure that we're really tracking who's showing up, and that every time we reach back out to community, we're doing a better and better job. And I think as a research lab, hopefully that's something that we can help bring to the process, is really to be able to track constant improvement and iteration.
Mr. Torres.
Just to follow up on that, really appreciate the TA in this moment with federal funding cuts. And I think there's a lot there for all of us to watch carefully and learn from. And I'm just wondering how you might be collecting that, particularly around just the infrastructure that's needed to adapt to those kind of changes, but also the sort of the qualitative things we're observing, the distrust in government and what that does to us as state government, how the ripple effects might impact our own work. So if there's a process to collect that long term and to think about how we reconcile this and heal from it, frankly, I'd be interested in hearing more.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the question of rebuilding ties between government and community is, when we talk about the context in which this work is happening, we're at an all-time low in terms of people's trust in institutions across the board. It's certainly something we're thinking about at universities as well as a high in polarization. And so anytime we're thinking about how to bring community in, we have to operate really carefully. I am of the belief that engagement isn't necessarily even neutral. If you do it badly, it can actually have negative effects by reinforcing the idea that government is not trustworthy, or that universities are kind of detached elites. And so we need to go into it always thinking about how we build trust. And I think one of the most remarkable things about the convening so far has been the state presence. People have come in really strong numbers from the state. in order to really participate and be part of the deliberations, be there to answer questions, and to really be in the room. And I think that has had really important implications. And we've been collecting both survey data as well as through the registration form, as well as through Polis, information about things like trust. We've been asking questions about perceptions of the likelihood that the state and the region can work well together, openness to being part of these conversations going forward. And we're seeing sort of really, really positive signs that this is a way for people to see a really different side of government that is much more present and deliberative and engaging.
Any other comments, questions? Justine, thank you very much. When this program was first conceived and developed, it was in the context of a lot of money, a lot of hope. There's a lot less money. That doesn't necessarily mean that there must be much less hope. We have to keep hope alive. We have to continue to believe that the arc of history must bend toward justice. That is the end that you are working toward. And, government service, it's all about people trying to do the right thing the right way. And so if I can, just on a personal note, Adrienne, I have seen over the last couple of years how much of your heart and soul you have put into this work, and it has been nothing short of inspiring. And I just simply invite you to keep doing the work as strongly and as ably as you have been doing. Better days and more money will come. We have to continue to believe that. And we just have to continue to meet people where they are, restore, rehabilitate, and earn people's trust across the state, and just work toward what we know the people of this state deserve. So congratulations on your work, and thank you for the update. Thank you for being here from the University of California, Berkeley, my brother. If there are no other comments, Justine, have we established there is no public comment on this?
We actually do have public comment. Laura O'Connor would like to speak. I believe that's a remote comment. Is that right?
No, Laura's here. Hi, Laura.
Excuse me. Hello, Laura.
And I second and third and brava to Director Curtis, and I attended 2 of the convenings, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but I just need to take a moment to honor Sabine. She is such an excellent example of the work that you all do in these agencies all the way down. I had the honor of working with her for a day long in San Francisco at the end of last year, where Secretary Garcia and Secretary Crowfoot came to visit one of the communities, the indigenous village in San Francisco. You all met Peter Bratt last year when he came to help educate about tribal, and she was the epitome of a person working to embody a California for all, and her ability to seamlessly move with the government's, first of all, getting everything done and making sure it happened. That was number one, which y'all do, but her ability as knowing tribal leaders and government and community and lots of institutional folks from San Francisco was amazing, and everyone just fell in love with her. And we had to put the follow-up on hold because of the fires in San Francisco, but I just reached back out to her. So tribute and love to Secretary Garcia and everyone. Similarly, I got great feedback from folks in Allensworth from the visit that the Agricultural Equity Land Trust took to with Doria Robbins and others. So I just wanted to note that across your agencies, people are feeling like you're doing this work, and I think you were there. And last but not least, I was at the convening in Sacramento with the Catalyst. I only went to the first one because I couldn't attend the second one, but both in San Diego and in Long Beach, the presence of new staff that were brilliant working with you all, and long-term staff like Amar, who's always amazing with folks being there. And I work in philanthropy and education and environment, and everybody was so listening to each other profoundly. So bravo, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. What a treat it is to see you. Every time Laura walks in the room, I'm like, okay, I'm in a good place. So thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Any other public comment, Justine?
That concludes public comment for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lehman and Ms. Jackson. Thank you so much. Lerman, thank you so much.
Just to not cause alarm, we're making room for the panel now. That's why we're all going to get up.
Yes. Our next item, as we prepare, this is item number 7 on today's agenda. This is a discussion of the results and the promise of Proposition 4 and 2 of our treasured programs here, TCC and CRC, our implementation grants. And Ahmad, did I skip an item? What did I skip? Oh, Californians for All. My apologies. My apologies. So, as we know, Californians for All is a very important program that mirrors, I think, our values as Californians. When you stop and think about the mission statement as we gather ourselves, the mission statement of Californians for All. Californians for All, as conceived out of our governor's office, is a recognition and celebration of the value that we have in Californians, that the California dream must remain available and accessible to all Californians. It uplifts the value that we are stronger as a community when all Californians are invited and are able to participate in our democracy. And we center equity in the work that we do. That California has always been and must remain a state for all of our people so that we can continue to once again be in all parts of this country the beacon that we have become used to being. And so while the federal landscape around us continues to change, we will hold true to our values and to our convictions, and we will continue to do the work that you do as part of Californians for All. And so I turn it over now to our next distinguished panel. And Faye, will you lead us in this discussion? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. Next slide, please. So as Vice Chair mentioned, SGC has a commitment to the California for All, and it's very much embodied in our mission to support healthy and thriving and resilient communities for all Californians. SGC continues to be an innovator in supporting communities, serving as a space where equity and sustainability concepts are translated into practice across the state. And SGC is committed to supporting state agencies and partners in advancing this work. And the panel today embodies some of that. Next slide. So I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists. We have 3 different case studies with 3 community partners and 3 state agencies represented today. The first is El Timpano. El Timpano, which is Spanish for eardrum, informs, engages, and amplifies the voices of Bay Area's Latino and Mayan immigrants. They launched in 2018 after 9 months participatory design process that involved hundreds of residents and community leaders from Oakland's Latino and Mayan communities. El Timpano approaches community centers reporting with creative in-person engagement in community spaces and a text message platform that provides actionable local news and reporting. El Timpano partnered with the Racial Equity Commission to host listening sessions in the Bay Area for the upcoming Racial Equity Framework. Represented here today, we have Lamina Melina Data Ernani, the Strategic Partners Manager, Marta Ramirez, the Mom Community Engagement Coordinator, In the state representative, we have Dr. Larissa Estes, the Executive Director of the California Racial Equity Commission. Next, we have Comité Cívico del Valle, which is a trusted nonprofit organization that serves communities across Imperial Valley. Comité Cívico was founded in 1987 on the principle that informed peoples build healthy communities and continues to incorporate this in all partnerships, research, and civic engagement efforts. Comité Cívico's aim to improve access to health services, community service programs, and a clean environment through education, capacity building, and civic engagement. Comité Cívico partners with the California Department of Public Health's Asthma Management Academy and Breathe in California to train community health workers on how to deliver evidence-based asthma education to Californians. We have represented today Esther Bajarano, the Director of Health Programs, and the State Representative Dr. Ashley Kissinger, the Research Scientist Supervisor with the Department of Public Health Environmental Health Investigation Branch. And lastly, we have the Central Californian Environmental Justice Network, CCEJN, which was formed in 1999 as a partnership of groups from Kern, Tulare, and King counties. CCEJN's coalition of grassroots environmental justice groups and individuals share the mission to preserve our natural resources by minimizing art or eliminating environmental degradation in Central California. CCEJN hosts biannual conferences that have become trademark events to convene and unite grassroots leaders throughout Central California. CCEJN collaborates with the Environmental Protection Agency as an active member of the Cal EPA Environmental Justice Task Force. We have represented Cesar Aguirre, the co-director of Air and Climate, and the state representative Shane Ludis, the environmental scientist at Cal Recycle. Welcome to all of you. The next slide, please. We have here presented the 4 community partners. Next slide, please. And then we have the 2 questions as posed. So the first question is to tell us about your project or initiative and how it supports increasing access to state resources and fair government processes. I'll turn it first to Dr. Larissa Estes, and we'll pass it down with approximately 4 minutes per organization. So.
Got it. I will be brief because I really want to defer my time to my partners over here with El Timpano. So as Faye shared, my name is Larissa Estes. I'm the Executive Director of the Racial Equity Commission. And really our project, our initiative was established through the Executive Order N1622, which created the Racial Equity Commission and charged us with developing a racial equity framework, engaging community, and making sure that we are working with government entities on supporting the implementation of racial equity strategies and tools throughout the state of California. When it comes to community engagement, leveraging a public body is a very structured way of engaging community. And it is a unique way in terms of how the commission has aimed to engage community to ensure that they are aware of their resources that are available, and that we are more importantly aware of the community needs so that we're able to understand how those needs impact communities, but also what is the lens that we need to look at it from an equity standpoint. While we are subject to the Bagley-Keene Act, like many state bodies are, we've looked for ways to empower communities by streamlining our meetings and how we create meeting spaces that are safe and at different times of the day to allow communities to be able to be engaged. We've looked to reduce burden on communities by working with philanthropic partners on providing resources to communities to be able to participate, whether they be stipends, refreshments, something as simple as childcare, or even in a place like Imperial Valley, travel stipends. And in all of these efforts, we've seen huge turnouts in our community engagement meetings. We typically have a full room offering translation services in a variety of languages. But it was the story of El Timpano and how we started partnering with each other that allows state government to be able, and this is part of what the racial equity journey is to recognize when you make a mistake or you don't see the full picture and start to make amends to that and make corrections. And so I'll start with a little story, then transition over to my partners. But it was at a public meeting in Oakland last year where there were requests for Mayan mom interpretation services. And our state contract did not have that language available. And I was aware of El Timpano because of my work previously with Alameda County and just knowing that there was a large Mayan mom population. And so we began to have conversations about how can we make sure that the Mayan mom community has a safe space to share their stories and that we're able to take these stories and reflect them back through the racial equity framework. And so with that, I will turn it over to my partners at El Timpano.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malena Datarnani. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager at El Tímpano, and we're a civic media nonprofit that partners with Latine and Mayan mom-speaking Indigenous communities in the Bay Area so that they can get access to timely, actionable information. With me is my colleague Marta Calmo Ramirez, our Mom Engagement Coordinator. She leads our direct engagement with the Mom community through initiatives like our Tumil news series. And at El Tímpano, we combine reporting with two-way civic engagement, like you was mentioned in the intro, through SMS, multilingual video, events, and in-person outreach, all built with the communities we serve. I'll now hand it to Marta to share the outcomes of our Mom Meet and Greet initiative.
Muy buenas tardes, Takada Honchai. Good afternoon to each one of you. Buenas tardes a cada uno de ustedes. As mentioned, I am Marta and I'm representing my mom community here in the Bay Area. To answer the first question and how this project increase and help support the Guatemalan mom community. The Mom in Greet was a community listening session co-hosted with the Racial Equity Commission. It was carefully designed to improve access to state resources and promote more fair and inclusive government engagement. This event was specifically held on June 21st of this year, and we welcomed over 50 community members, including children's, including community members, state leaders, educators, and even service providers, into what we called a warm, welcoming space, because a lot of community members, when they see the trust that you provide and the comfort of the space, they feel more welcomed and they feel more themselves because they see a person of their culture in that space that creates that comfort for them. And this discussion was led in my native language, Mum, from Todos Santos. We have over 27 different languages under the umbrella of Guatemala, and I only speak one of them. So that is something that I always kind of say because I'm just one person in this room that is representing the Guatemalan community. But of course, I do not want to forget about so many different languages out there that represents Guatemala. And in this event, we provided live interpretation available in English and Spanish, which made this event so unique because we go to different events where you will need the mom translation. But in this case, we were providing Spanish and English translation, which was great because we had 3 different interpreters in our team that were providing the Spanish and English, and they were mom speakers, so it made it very unique. And then also, of course, this multilingual approach made sure that the mom speaking resident, a group which we are often left out in public conversations, could speak openly about the issues that we face, including topics like housing, healthcare, discrimination, and exclusion. Their voices are now helping to guide the California Equity Racial Framework, shaping how state agencies could build into their policies and services, which is very important. But also it has created a space that honored the mom language and culture. It's a project that also broke down barriers that I always state and emphasize, that supports and invite residents into meaningful conversation with the government, because in a lot of different cases, sometimes we are forced to navigate our ways through the system. But in this space, our community was very well respected to the point where the Racial Equity Commission was the ones that came and looked for our community and provided that space instead of driving 2 hours or 3 hours where these public comments are available. Council. And overall, the Hmong community meet and greet showed how public engagement can move beyond one-way English-only outreach that we are very used to. Instead, it has given towards inclusive participation where communities don't just receive information, but it helps share the government and because their voices and their ideas were heard and taken in consideration. And I will pass it on to Melinda.
Oh, is it back to me? Oh, next.
Sorry. Oh, good afternoon. My name is Ashley Kissinger, and I lead the state asthma program called California Breathing within the California Department of Public Health. Since 2017, we have partnered with our amazing partner, Comité Cívico del Valle, to reduce the burden of asthma, which we measure as ED visits, hospitalizations, missed work and school days, asthma. And we're focusing on the most impacted communities across California, who are primarily children, Black, Latino, and Native communities. To paint a small picture, Black Californians experience the most stark disparity in asthma. They have 5 times more emergency room visits and hospital stays and twice as many deaths from asthma compared to white Californians. In our partnership, we developed the Asthma Management Academy to train community health workers who deliver evidence-based asthma self-management education for people with asthma and their families in these impacted communities. Community health workers and promotores de salud are critical and trusted community members, and they bridge the gap between their communities and healthcare and social services and are well documented in improving asthma. In our training, CCV's own community health workers train and teach community health workers from across the state about what is asthma, its environmental triggers, medications and delivery devices, and evidence-based tools to monitor asthma control through skill building and real-life scenarios. And we know from our own evaluations that CCV's expertise and stories from the field are what makes this training very memorable and very special. In this partnership, we've increased access to state resources by providing continuous funding to CCV through a combination of federal and state resources for now going on 9 years to provide this 20-hour participatory training in both English. Since 2018, we have trained 752 community health workers from over 100 organizations, mainly federally qualified health centers, which are the safety net of clinics for the poor and uninsured, community-based organizations, and local health departments. And we know we're making a difference because we have demonstrated about 83% reduced ED visits for asthma, 70% fewer missed work and school days, and 63% asthma control for people with asthma who received education from a community health worker academy. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I'm 9 months pregnant, so I'm so sorry. I have one more point.
You're doing great.
But I need more breath. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Doing great.
Take your time.
I know.
Wow.
Lastly, our collaboration on the Asthma Management Academy has increased access to state resources and sustainability by building capacity of these 752 community health workers across the state to be eligible to provide asthma services for reimbursement for Medi-Cal, which we are super excited for. And I'll pass it on to our partner. Thank you guys.
And then thank you for elevating what a community health worker is. And I'm going to add a little bit to your statements. Thank you, Ashley. Um, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I would like to thank everybody for the invitation and a little bit about a community-based organization like many that we train across the state. I am the Director of Health Programs at Comité Cívico del Valle, and I've been at Comité Cívico del Valle for about 22 years now. Started as a promotora, started as a community health worker, volunteering her time for about 2 years. I am part of that community. I am the community. And so I appreciate again the opportunity of being here. We were founded in 1987 by a group of farm workers that saw a need and change in the community where they lived and reside. CCV was founded in 1987 with the roots focused on social services and at that time citizenship classes to farm worker families. Asthma is a chronic disease in many rural communities like Imperial County. We are at the US border, and the prevalence of asthma in Imperial County and again across the state is very high. It's a very common chronic illness that can take lives and has taken lives. And so thank you again for the opportunity. I've been working with California Breathing and the, I want to say, beautiful, wonderful team and the relationships that we have created over, I don't know, 2017. I think it was 2015 before that, but survey data collected in 2022, again, one community as many across the state. In Imperial County, we found that 14.9% adults have asthma, are living with asthma. What does living with asthma mean? That means that you're at night coughing and wheezing and are attending work or attending school with an inability to be able to gasp a breath of air. And like the American Lung Association says, if you can't breathe, nothing else matters. And I truly believe that. Children are even more affected. 16.4% of families in Imperial County with children reported their sons or daughters having asthma, a figure more than twice the national rate, which is 7.8% across California. Pediatric and asthma emergency visits and hospitalizations in Imperial County have been reported at roughly the double of the California average. And patients experience uncontrolled asthma with distressive symptoms, coughing, wheezing, chest tightness, difficult breathing. Why this program is so important? Why? Because we have been able to reach communities like us. We are trusted individuals in the community, promotoras that work along healthcare centers. We partner with the local hospital, which refers the asthma patients to us. We are rooted in the community and we're trusted. In Imperial County, there's 5,000 patients per physician. That is a big number. And across the state of California, in underserved communities, this is the real issue. And so we are connecting now virtually during COVID. We transitioned the Asthma Academy, which was in person. We would travel across the state, me and 2-3 promotoras, an asthma certified educator, which is also providing a competency exam after the 3-day training, interactive. You're not on Zoom, you're not on this webinar where you have like 300, 500 people. You are there with somebody that is listening to you, knows about your community, like, because we share the same issues. And we have built so many relationships across the state, and then connecting them with the Asthma Management Academy to continue improving the quality of life of residents across the state. And so we're empowering promotoras, CBOs, federally qualified health centers across the state of California. I've heard, and we have a lot of stories where they had never received a training like ours. Because we're promotoras. We're there, we care, we're rooted. And so we're training others that have the same passion and desire to make a difference. And so I want to thank you for coming here all the way, but thank you for the trust and the partnership with the program. And we also had a racial equity last week in Imperial County. And so we were able, again, to partner together and bring in community members to be able to hear from them and provide insight. So thank you again for inviting me, but I don't know if I answered the questions correctly.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne Lewis, and I'm an environmental justice enforcement liaison. Sorry, let me put this a little lower. For the Office of Environmental Justice, Tribal Relations, and Education at CalRecycle. And I also serve as the liaison for the Cali PA Environmental Justice Task Force. So Cali PA's Environmental Justice Task Force was created in 2013 to coordinate compliance and enforcement work at Cali PA's boards, departments, and offices in areas of California that are burdened by multiple sources of pollution, while also meaningfully engaging with environmental justice communities like CESAR and CCEJN, and incorporating environmental justice considerations into our programs. The work is centered around enhanced community engagement through dedicated liaisons to follow up on complaints related to air, water, soil, pesticides, and hazardous waste. Communities rarely experience just one source of pollution, but multiple sources of pollution at the same time. The task force is uniquely placed to leverage and coordinate with the appropriate agencies to address communities' needs holistically. As a liaison, my primary role is to oversee Fresno and Kern County, but I also provide support in other communities across the state. Central California Environmental Justice Network, or CCEJN, is one of our community partners, and I feel privileged to work and learn alongside staff like CESAR and incorporate their knowledge and expertise into our efforts. To strengthen communications, liaisons and other agencies regularly attend monthly IVAN meetings, and in addition, we've also created a pre-monthly meeting, which allows us to respond quickly to new and ongoing reports. This way, concerns are not only being raised for the first time at monthly meetings, but we have an opportunity to assist the community a few weeks earlier and hopefully resolving complaints much quicker. We found these smaller pre-meetings to be especially beneficial as they typically include one representative from each agency who can directly address these issues. Through enforcement, we share both internally and externally. We share information while recognizing that communities play an important role in bringing issues to our attention and helping agencies set priorities. Enforcement is just one of the tools we can use to protect people and the environment by ensuring compliance with regulatory laws. Through this work, we can foster a culture of compliance to ensure that communities can thrive in a safe and healthy environment. A key focus has been building capacity. When we first began, it was unclear to many community members which agency they should contact to submit complaints. But through the EJ Task Force efforts, we've helped clarify these pathways by providing the appropriate contacts and ensuring the reports and inquiries are responded to in a timely manner. Now, communities like CCEJN reach out directly to agencies and will include us in situations where maybe responses are lacking and we need to step in to assist. This task force effort has strengthened relationships among community members, state, federal, and local agencies, while improving communications. So when a problem arises, we respond quickly, working together to find solutions, maintaining transparency with the community, and addressing inquiries more efficiently. And I'll pass it on to Cesar to talk a little bit more.
Thank you. Looking at your question, I see the word fair. So I wanted to know the exact definition. And it says impartial and just, without favoritism or discrimination. And often in the communities that I serve, I ask people to raise their hand if they think that an agricultural field or an oil well would be built in the backyard of a house in Beverly Hills. And everyone always raises their hand and says, no, that would never happen, right? And for community members, especially in rural communities like Kern County, there is a feeling or a lack of trust that agencies, even if they do hear the complaints, may not properly address them, right? There could be many things like the digital divide, language barriers that can attribute to this, but the IVAN network puts a face in between agencies and community members and adds a friendly mediator, because I have phone numbers from folks in enforcement branches and different agencies all the way up to directors of entire agencies. And I think agencies are filled with limitations, yes, but also with well-intentioned people that want to better the overall quality of life for people in California. And through the Ivan network, we've had improved resolutions for a lot of environmental problems that, communities that would otherwise make phone calls and complaints to one agency are now having those complaints directed to several agencies that have jurisdiction over this. And where perhaps one loophole may have failed them in one agency, now several agencies are involved and can address several different root problems. And that allows to also increase awareness, right? Because different agencies review different toxins or different sources of pollutions. And therefore, if different agencies are collaborating, this interagency collaboration not only increases the capacity of those individual agencies, but also increases the awareness of cumulative effects, right? Maybe only methane is monitored for by the air districts, but perhaps CalGEM, the oil and gas regulator, may come with different instruments and find other pollution, right? So that enhanced collaboration and the relationship, not only between agency to agency, but agency to community members, really bolsters community trust, because that connection is made by and for people in the community with people in the community, right? The inspectors are people in the community that also breathe the same air. And when community members learn to trust the people that are stewarding the complaints and the reports, then that really builds up not only the community trust, but the tangible benefits that are felt by community, because it does also lead to increased responsiveness and accountability. One example of this was in November of last year, I believe, there was a stay in place order, right? A shelter in place order due to a leak at a facility in Taft. Obviously, due to the shelter in place, we are aware that agencies were aware because the shelter in place was put out. But until somebody made a report to the Ivan network and asked, what do I do? What is around my house? That we forwarded this to our partners with the EPA, and they actually asked the question, well, when was the last time it was inspected, right? And that led to the first inspection of that facility in 10 years by the Water Board, something that otherwise would not have happened had it not been for this increased awareness, the collaborative relationships, and the increased responsiveness and accountability. And I think that's just one example of many where we've also found more transparency, not only with agencies, but with regulations as well, where we learn where loopholes may be affecting agencies and bringing that up to not only enforcement staff, but the director level staff, right? And trying to figure out how we can gap these loopholes or have interagency collaboration to make sure that they can be addressed properly. There's other issues like a foaming pipe that was coming from a waste water management district that should not have been coming out of this pipe because it was a 16-foot tall aerator, right? And until that was reported to our partners here at the EPA, did the local agencies take action, right? Because the local agencies were aware and they said, well, if we're not there when it smells, then it may not be happening. So until we had a very egregious video sent to us that even an air district inspector said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Can everyone please see this video? Did we get more attention on it? And not just the air district, right? But the water board was on it. The local CUPA, the Certified Unified Protection Agency, was on it, right? A word that I only know because of my involvement with the EPA and their deep understanding of local agencies and how to steward complaints appropriately. That's bolstered by the resources that we receive, like activity logs from repeat offenders that we get on our Ivan networks. And it's really led to a reporting platform that produces responses from agency like no other anywhere in California. I've talked to people in, the Bay Area and Los Angeles, and when they make the same kind of complaints that we do, it may go a few days before they hear from inspectors and a few weeks before those sites are inspected. But I've made complaints at 3 a.m. and have had responses by 3:30 from a groggy air district inspector saying, I'm on the way, Cesar. Someone's going to get there, right? And they know my name because those connections and relationships have been made and reinforced by folks at the EPA, because we don't know what we don't know, right? There's an infinite amount of regulations, but when we have access to the capacity and knowledge, subject matter expertise that the Cal EPA partnership has brought to us, then we know when to ask the tough questions. And when we don't, they ask the tough questions, which is very refreshing, right? Sometimes we run into agencies that don't want to call a leak a leak. They'd rather call it emission loss. But when we have agencies that are willing to ask the hard questions to make sure things are done in the right way, that not only builds community trust, but it builds my trust, right? And it allows me to feel comfortable to have community members interacting with folks like Cheyenne, with folks like Trevor Anderson, that I think are examples of how community should be respected and heard. So I just want to extend a big thank you to you, but also to folks like Cheyenne and Trevor that have made me feel respected in a place where I feel like complaints go unaddressed because there is a lack of perceived value for my community and my life. So I feel like we are being seen as valuable now. And if all we have to do is complain to the right people, then I thank God that we have people that help us complain more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of you've already touched upon this, but I wanted to uplift the second question specifically for the community partners. Talk a little bit about some of the outcomes and successes that you've had and what best practices that demonstrated by your work that can help to address some of the challenges that are faced by your work. So that's the first to
I think one of the most striking and heartwarming outcomes of the MUM community listening session really was what we heard from community members during and after the event. Many were saying we need more events like this. And what that resonated for us was that folks weren't just seeking information, right? They were looking for connection. They were looking for dialogue and a sense of belonging, especially at a time when Indigenous and immigrant communities often feel excluded or invisible. And despite the level of risk and fear that inevitably, unfortunately, comes from showing up at all as an immigrant to any event, in these times, folks from the MUM community, they came to this event with a lot of love, a lot of courage. They participated fully. They asked questions. They shared their feedback and stayed long after the event ended. And since then, at El Timpano, we've seen increased engagement from the MUM community as well. More voice notes, more messages to our SMS platform, a greater interest in civic and public life. And we've learned several best practices. For one, Martha had mentioned this, meaningful language access is critical. So what do we mean by that? Not just translation, but attention to dialects and cultural nuance. That's what builds trust and understanding. And partnership-driven outreach is also essential. We leverage trusted partners like Tech Exchange for a Chromebook raffle and co-live stream the event with Radio Balam, which is deeply embedded in the MUM community. And this helped us meet people where they're at, common theme of this meeting, with a sense of abundance. And El Timpano's community ambassadors are oídos comunitarios, community ears. Both Spanish and MUM speaking also help facilitate engagement and dialogue. And I believe the most important lesson learned is this, another great theme of this meeting, blending material support with civic opportunity. So for example, offering participation stipends, ensuring that venue is easily accessible for all ability types and near public transportation options, child supervision, culturally relevant food, not just any food, alongside opportunities to participate. That's what helps folks stay engaged during the event. And in general, our work really highlighted an important lesson about systems change and friction. What we accomplished would not have been possible without the support of the California Racial Equity Commission. They provided operational guidance as well as financial support, and the East Bay Community Foundation provided even more additional financial resources. And in many government or institutional partnerships, there are points of friction, some necessary, some not, and sometimes they can slow down or block community engagement efforts. But in this case, both the commission and the foundation, they trusted us to do our work, they gave us the resources we needed, and they allowed us to focus on creating a really strong plan rather than navigating lengthy forms or complex approval processes. And I'd just like to end by noting that El Timpano is part of a larger ecosystem of community-based newsrooms that are really turning trust into a lever for civic engagement, which in turn lays a really strong foundation for policy equity. So when we reduce these unnecessary barriers to collaboration among local agencies, state agencies, and community organizations, like Cesar mentioned, we can create spaces where historically underserved communities can uplift their voice, they can affirm their agency, and gain access to resources, as well as a sense of safety and joy as well.
Oh, through the Asthma Management Academy, we train community health workers to deliver evidence-based asthma education. But those community health workers that we train across the state have trained thousands of families in their communities. From these programs, we have developed a set of best practices. CCV staff and our community health workers network are able to make 12 to 16 home visits, give or take, within a week, and 48 to 64 visits within the month. Again, I share this because communities across the state and community-based organizations and centers who receive asthma education are also doing probably the same. After a month of receiving home visits, we begin to collect information. And so once we provide education, for example, our Imperial County program is called Respira Sano. And so that's something that our community-based organization has received that education. Now we're providing asthma education in the homes to the families in person in their setting. And so they are able to receive from 3 one-hour education sessions to 5 one-hour education sessions. After months of receiving these, we begin to collect information to track changes of lung function, reduction in school, and workday absenteeism, as I earlier shared. We record the information into a database to help develop asthma action plan for the family. This asthma action plan includes asthma diaries, activity of cleaning green, because we also provide a bucket with cleaning products to reduce the triggers inside the home, and clean green thus reducing less triggers for our asthma patients. Vacuum cleaners, HEPA vacuum cleaners, and also true education on what is asthma. We sit down with them and say, this is what asthma is. This is your lung, and this is how your lung works, and this is why it's important to follow the guidelines from the physician. So we're enhancing the education from providers. We encourage the family to share their plan with their physician, the indoor plan of different triggers that they might have been using, modifications that they have made, and their asthma diary when they're writing down how many times a day or a week the child is breathing or unable to breathe, cough, and do any activities at school. I hope this overview is just a good snapshot of the Asthma Academy and the effects it does within communities, within organizations, AFQHCs, where they're now able to go and deliver asthma education to homes across the state of California. I look forward to answering any questions throughout the panel discussion. Thank you.
Excuse me. I think for some best practices, I think some of the best practices have been illustrated by kind of the way that agencies have been rewriting their DNA in which they interact with each other. Community engagement is more a part of different agencies like the Air District and CalGEM because of the amount of community work that goes into reaching out to them and asking them to give us updates. Because the reason that we ask them to give us updates is we like to be the first face that people see when something goes wrong. We like to knock on doors and let them know, like, hey, you know, there was a leak in your neighborhood. This is who you can contact. This is where you can make a complaint. And when interagency collaboration is a part of those types of efforts, and we see the most out of those types of efforts. We've had CARB staff come with me door to door and do health interviews and do monitoring around people's houses where there was an explosive leak so that they feel safe. We've had agencies discuss with each other and you know, enforcement inspectors talking from one agency to another, you know, being able to go back and forth on what parts they do inspect and what parts they don't, so that they can, amplify the capacity of the agencies, I think is one of the best practices that has come out of the IVAN network, because it kind of de-silos the enforcement work in a way that's very meaningful, and in a way that not only impacts communities in a very positive way, but also agencies in a very positive way. So I see communities not being the only beneficiary from this. I see agencies also benefiting from this, because they can learn that they also have partners in different agencies, learn that they can also call different agencies, and have those kinds of partnerships benefit whenever we do have similar issues that come up. Because, for example, leaking wells is a big issue in Kern County, surprise, surprise. And we found that through on-the-ground inspections. I'm a certified thermographic inspector. I've been, trained through the Air District and CARB on how to do some inspection tasks. So when I call and I make an inspection and I use words like Ringleman and opacity percentage, they start asking like, well, who are you? Where did you learn these words? But that kind of weight and jargon is what moves some agency folks, right? They know what's going on, because I can paint a proper picture using their language, using their methods and understandings of quality control and quality assurance. So I think making ourselves familiar with agencies so that we can speak to them in their language helps them speak with each other, which in turn benefits community members and doesn't leave community members wondering, should I call the right person? Who should I call? And, keep a list in their head. All they have to know is to trust that the IVAN network will steward their report in a way that gets anyone who is involved a part of it. And, folks feel confident being able to have this type of one-stop shop where they don't have to learn jurisdictions and numbers and rules. They just have to know who to call and know that they're going to make the proper connections.
Thank you. As you can see, these are very, very rich stories that each of our community partners bring. And although we're at the tail end of our panel, I want to give our panelists one last opportunity to give some final thoughts, very brief comments. So I'll pass it first to Dr. Aristides.
Thank you. I want to lift up a quote that we heard during our listening session because it validates the work of the Racial Equity Commission and our development of the Racial Equity Framework. The quote is, "The government changed our identity. They put us as Latinos, and that is a problem. No one in our communities is raising that. We are Indigenous. We are Native." And that quote really validates the importance of the work that, for example, the Office of Data and Innovation are doing around data standards, and the Commission thinking about how do we advise state agencies and departments on data disaggregation. And without that validation, we wouldn't be doing our work as a government body to make sure the things that we are building and that we are creating can actually be used and validate the needs of community. So thank you.
I guess I think that one thing that we've learned is that operationalizing language justice is not easy and it's not cheap, but it's important. And I think the more that we can flex that muscle through these kinds of collaborations, the more adept we'll be able to host community events where, like Marta says, you don't necessarily, like this isn't accessible to a MUM speaker right now. And how cool would it be to be able to share this with the MUM community and give them an opportunity to do public comment. But it's about what is the context within which the opportunity is being provided, right? I needed a car to get here. I needed $20 for parking, and the list goes on. And so I think let's get clear on what are the standards for community engagement. And I think the Racial Equity Framework will do that very well. And let's hold ourselves accountable to actually operationalizing it instead of just keeping it in a nice reference guide. That's all I would say. Thank you.
I want to end out with so many has been talked today, so much topic, so much different needs. But I feel like for me and for the community that I come from, the smallest things to everyone is the biggest things to us. Being here representing the Guatemalan community and hearing from the community that nobody ever comes to public comment is so much to me. So I feel like I do have the power to come and talk for the community, but I wish it was given more opportunities for the community, but I feel like this is the beginning. There's always a first step, and the first step has been taken, and hopefully it will continue to be processed. It is very difficult for coming from a community that when you came to the United States, English was not your language, Spanish is not your language, it's mom. And so a lot of things happen in the community, but I feel like I'm appreciate that I'm here. I'm giving this presentation. It's coming from my heart. It's not just something that I take in vain. Like, oh, I'm just gonna go over in Sacramento. I'm gonna go and speak for my community, and I am here. I'm representing them, and I'm representing the years of different challenges that we had to go through. So thank you all so much. And thank you so much for the Racial Equity Commission for this opportunity, and hope we continue more work in the Hmong community.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of you all today. I feel very strongly about the impact that we're having, reducing the burden of asthma across California, elevating community health workers and promotores de salud, advancing amazing community partnerships, and also doing great work, having community health workers train other community health workers in a way that's never been done before. I do have to underline the uncertainty of our program in the future. California Breathing within the California Department of Public Health is funded by the CDC. And our next year of funding is uncertain. And I hate to think of what might happen if, the Asthma Management Academy goes away and what that means for the fate of asthma for Californians. So I really hope we're able to continue doing great work. But I just wanted to be transparent about the unfortunate uncertainty of our.
Well, I want to thank everyone, and I want to thank Ashley and California Breathing and her wonderful people that work at the California Department of Public Health, and that beautiful relation that has blossomed for many years, not only with CCB, but with others across the state of California. Thank you for the opportunity, for the trust. And so, we're in it together, and we'll make sure that we're continue providing these essential services to of education to residents across the state and promotoras across the state and others that work in the FQAC. But thank you so much for your attention to our session. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you as well for the opportunity to speak and invite the Cali PA Environmental Justice Task Force to share our exciting work. I feel inspired listening to all the great work that all these other organizations here on the panel are doing. Organizations like CCEJN are valuable partners. And while they're learning from us, we are equally learning from them. And I feel honored to continue to work alongside CESAR.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I want to extend a big thank you to everyone for having us here. I think like the EPA definition of environmental justice is having environmental people at the table. And I think the reason that we should be at the table is because if we're not, then we're on the menu, right? And I know that cumulative impact is real and it takes a long time and systemic change is necessary, but it also takes a long time. And there is so much that we can do now to make sure that everyone here at the table, like in half a generation or less from now, can feel confident in saying, no one will ever put anything in my backyard that's going to harm my health, or no one is ever going to distance access from what I need for my community, right? I want that sense of deserved respect to be something that's ubiquitous in our communities. And even though it may take time, 5 years may not feel like a lot in terms of moving policy or the way politics works, but if it's the first 5 years of your child's life, then it's the most important 5 years of that lifetime. So I think there's so much that we can do now to chip away at those cumulative impacts. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to chip away at that and do so with an amazing community of community leaders as well. So thank you.
So I just really wanted to thank all the panelists for being here, also for the many miles that all of you have traveled to come here from out of town. All of you carry some really, really powerful stories, and I think it's really important for us to hear it here at the council, and I hope that we'll have that opportunity again to uplift these types of stories. So I'd love to thank you all for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. And I'll turn it back over to Vice Chair for comments and questions.
Justine, are you going to do our public comment reminder? And then we will have a discussion with
Perfect.
council members.
Okay, so if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meeting-events/council and complete the public comment form. I'll hand it back to Vice Chair Cardenas.
Thanks very much. Tremendous appreciation for your presentation today, for the work that you do. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Any questions, comments, Mr. Torres?
I guess back to your earlier point, Vice Chair, looking for ways to think about hope and inspiration for the future. This panel really brought that, so thank you. The work that you do is so powerful, and it just reminds us of how this moment, the lessons that we're learning from this moment is how much closer we have to be with community, and to lift up who our partners are and make that very visible for all of our state workforce. So, I look forward to learning more about how we operationalize that. And frankly, to stop using words like operationalize and speak in plain language more. But how do we really solve problems together? How do we work together to not leave people behind, especially when we have additional challenges around trust and visibility? And so our agency remains committed to, and I know our agency partners do too, about looking for new ways to do this. No longer the typical webinar, government webinar, we talk out to the cyberspace and hope someone gets our message, but more about really being in community and learning about what the needs are and hearing, working with you to communicate back and forth. I had the privilege of doing a project last year with promotoras and community health workers with Comité, and went around the state. I come from the CBO world. I was blown away by how much better they were than anyone I've ever worked with around communication, unpacking government, explaining what we do in ways that were just really profound, invited into people's homes to have coffee, to talk about what we do in government. Like, I would never be invited to anyone's house to talk about government, but they are, So that to me was a really just eye-opening experience to think about. These folks are worthy of respect, and they bring so much value to our state. And so I just look forward to, more partnership, creating communities of practice for all of us to really be arm in arm with each other in this moment as a state. So thank you.
My Chancellor.
Oh, thank you. This is more for Aaron. As we hear these presentations, I'll tell you, I recall just earlier someone saying about doing to the folks from Berkeley a gap analysis or something. Look, I'm going to say this inartfully, right? A little bit awkward because I'm just thinking about it right now, but are there programs within our portfolio that could be perhaps interpreted in more flexible ways as these kinds of groups are discovering clawbacks and gaps in, the idea that we're going to compromise work related to asthma. I'm from the San Joaquin Valley, and we've got a little thing called valley fever that lodges itself in the bronchial. And so, are there programs within our portfolio that could be, again, reinterpreted with greater flexibility to backfill some programs that might be at this moment compromised, underfunded, et cetera, that we could backfill for a year or two or something more dynamically, more creatively, that the board could exercise a little bit of courageous leadership in reinterpreting, and or go to the legislature and say, could you give us a little bit more flexibility to support some programs that are experiencing some completely unanticipated erosion of support? I go back, you say $75 million I mean, that's significant. And like that is suddenly because it has the word climate in it. So, challenge the dais to maybe be a little bit more dynamic in giving you guidance as to what we should be looking at. Oh, because I unfortunately anticipate these kinds of challenges are not going to dissipate soon. And so, again, we've got not inconsiderable resources. You've got the willingness of a lot of federal or state agencies here. And is there a way to help, not just ideate, but to say, look, here's a small amount that could be used for this purpose. Again, I know we're locked in a great deal statutorily, et cetera, but that's why you got lawyers like Matt. And to say, look but I'll tell you, we go to the Hill and we say to the people that put this in statute and law, we need maybe not indefinitely, but right now, a little bit of creative, equity-driven creativity to try to help with some groups that are experiencing a retreat of available resources to their efforts in the strategic best interest of the growth of California.
Is that is that an invitation for our executive, Ms. Curtis?
Well, she needs no invitation, certainly, yes.
There we go. Now I get it. Red to green. Thank you. And thank you, Vice Chair Cardenas. It is certainly top of mind, I think, for all of us, and especially Adrian, who has been focused on it through our Connecting Communities initiative. And I know that we are all looking for creative ideas and working together to do that, and keeping track of the incredibly dynamic situation changes daily, as she said. So I think that our ears are open and we are very interested in creative solutions.
I won't name specific programs, but I know on occasion there's been a little bit of carry forward, and so there might be some we thought we were going to use, but not, and a few $1 million that we might have some greater discretion to say, look, maybe normally we would apply it to this program. However, in this instance, at this moment, there are 4 programs, right, et cetera, right? Could be 4, could be 40. Again, just think about that and maybe how this group could be helpful to allow you, to afford you that latitude, that flexibility, that, equity-minded interpretation, should those funds be there, and maybe make an argument for some additional funds for this kind of general purpose. Again, I'm thinking of backfilling. Right. And in my line of work, we're facing that, right? You've got people that thought I had this because you told me I did. And I made commitments on the promise and confidence of your word. And now I've got to scramble. And so, I mean, I just, how are we talking about this? How are we talking about asthma? You can't breathe, hard to do just about anything else. I get it, right? And so we should all get it, and we should all kind of lean in a little bit. I guess this is my way, in a long way, expressing my willingness to.
Appreciate that. And we can certainly take that back and bring more information back to you.
I think just briefly, on that funding piece, something that I found really compelling is Ashley mentioned 9 years of sustained funding, and the trust that it takes, it takes that sustained, consistent funding. So my question for you is going to be, where is that funding coming from? So you answered that, but I think it is really important for us to think about what it actually takes to show up year after year, and not just one-time opportunities. And so however we can try and think about being creative about the types of pots of funding. I have many other questions that I will save it in the interest of time, but just super appreciate all of you. I could sit here and listen all day. It was really incredible hearing all the stories. So thank you again for being here.
Deputy Secretary Chi.
Yes, thank you so much to all of the panelists and many cases traveling so far to be here to provide your powerful stories and to teach us in the ways that government can work best to build healthier communities. One through line that I really gathered from all of your stories is that it really takes trust. The building of it, the years of, in some cases, decades of just being deep in the community and being there to support when you're needed. And my fellow council members have alluded to the diminishing sort of at the federal level of that kind of trust and the erosion of support in the building of this effort. And one question that's top of mind is that I understand this diminishing of support to not just be about funding, but also in sort of the fear that has been instilled in members of the community about showing up to come to these spaces and to gather to do the work. And we think also from, a government perspective of, how to protect our staff who are doing this work. And this question probably cannot be answered here today, but I would love to hear your insights on, your experiences decades through other administrations that have been challenging, of the types of strategies that you're adopting to make sure that spaces are safe to protect members of the community and continuing to do this work and protecting staff and others to show up.
One thing that we've done is do our best to try to make personal connections with the folks that are community leaders. And if sharing their story in a public way, if there's Zoom available, then maybe we have like a house meeting where we invite people there and say, hey, we have a few folks here that would like to testify. But I think getting creative has been our only option, really, because people are scared to go and speak their voice. People are scared to gather in groups of like-minded folks and say, hey, we are the affected community, when they feel it makes them a target. So I think it is a very real thing. And I think shifting our focus to make sure that people feel safe is important, but it also takes away our capacity to be able to address their immediate needs like asthma, like environmental issues. Because that is top priority for them, right? Is they want to feel safe. They want to feel like they can go to the store or, speak their voice in a public setting. So being creative has been one way that we do that. But in rural communities, there is that digital divide. So there's several barriers that we have to jump over, and capacity is always an issue to be able to properly address those things.
Can I?
Please.
For us, yes, it's been a big challenge and a big issue. Currently, this year we would have had our third Conferencia Campesina. It's a farm worker conference. We had 250 farm workers last year in April. Farm workers that had never had a space for education, for gathering, for acknowledging them, for thanking them. And we had our second Conferencia Campesina last year at the SDSU University down in Imperial County. And we were funded again for the third year this year in April. And our farm workers were waiting since January. And we try to have it after the harvest and before the heat. And so we had to cancel in March. And it was a little bit early, but we said that we're not going to put anybody in that position. We have the promotoras have been doing amazing work. They're going to the homes. Again, we have very dedicated promotores, and I say this across the state. When you're a promotora, it's not everyone can be a community health worker. It has to be somebody that really cares, that is passionate, that is there to help others, and not everybody can do that. But a lot of promoters across the state have been doing the work like me for years. And so we're out at the homes, we're trusted, we're doing phone banking, we're sending letters. Just last week, and it was so beautiful, last week we had some funding that we received for Imperial County to support families with extreme heat. Families and farm workers that are not able to go out and harvest because they have fear. They're indoors. And then they have this mobile home trailer that's probably 30, 40, 50 years old, and there's no AC. And so in Imperial County, if you don't have AC, it's like being in a car with the windows up. And so we were able to receive funding, and we were able to deliver and install mini splits, deliver air purifiers. Thank you to GoFundMe, who trusted. Comité Cívico, I think also CCEJN. But we had a press release last week, and we were really nervous about it. And we had, called a few people. It was from 9 to 10. And we said, we're going to have this press release. If some of you can please show up, we're going to have it in this space where we had 50 people, almost 60 people show up. And it was behind our office. I think at the end of the day, they trust us. And, we're having these smaller gatherings. We have Cafecito por la Salud every other Thursday, which is coffee with farm workers inside our building in the afternoon. So community-based organizations know their community, know their people, and find ways and strategies to still come together in a safer way, And so we've been lucky this year. We did have one of the promotoras who does community work. They were a couple blocks down from the organization, and Border Patrol stopped them. They were doing door to door, and they stopped them. And they said, "Show me your," and she was actually a citizen. She says that, and she didn't have anything but her, her backpack and her material. And luckily, the Border Patrol allowed her to go to her house 3 blocks away. She lived close, thank God. And she was, not taken into custody or what. But it is a real issue, but we strategize. We survive, and we're resilient, and we'll find ways to continue convening with our residents.
Very brief, but I think this is a question that we're wrestling with a lot in terms of how do we ensure that our community is safe and our staff are safe, because we are doing reporting with community. And one thing that stood out to me, I remember Jordan from the California Racial Equity Commission sent me an email a couple months before the event saying like, hey, if you don't feel safe doing this event, then it's okay, we can call it. And we get texts from subscribers all the time, that reinforce a lot of what Esther and Cesar are saying. Like, people are scared. They're not going to the food banks. They're not going to their doctor's appointments. They're not leaving their house. So that's true. But we made a very intentional choice to not name the safety protocols that were in place and just say like, hey, we want you there. We're going to celebrate you. We'll have pan dulce, cafecito. We're going to have some chile relleno for lunch. Like, we'll have music playing. And we did create a sense of like home there. And even though we did have the protocols in place, we didn't name it, and we centered just joy and a sense of normalcy. And so I think both things are true. I think folks are scared and they're staying at home, and also folks are really brave and they show up. And I want both narratives to kind of coexist, because I think when we double down on everyone's scared, I think that's exactly what they want, right? So it's just something to be mindful of, is not, not all that, like, we've been scared before. Like, ICE raids are not new. And so, yeah, I think that was something that we learned, is like, when you center joy, you can be pleasantly surprised with like how attractive that can be.
Any further?
Just appreciation and thank you so much for your insights, and also pointing out that perhaps the the best way to talk about strategy in the face of this climate is not over a public meeting that we're currently holding, and to have smaller conversations centering trust and the community. Appreciate your work, and it is so important for this work to continue, and you are absolutely an indispensable part of that. And thank you for keeping that hope alive.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments or questions, thank you all profusely for being here. This is what resistance feels like. You are what resilience looks like. Through your work, you are bending the arc of history toward the justice that all Californians deserve. We are honored to be in support of your service. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Si se puede.
So there is no public comment on this item. So we've closed this item, and I know that El Timpano has some materials that they'd like to share with council members. We can make that publicly available after the event as well. Either way, you can hand them out directly if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Now we are on to item number 7. That is going to be, are we not?
Apologies, you're correct on which item it is, but the number is item 8. There's just a
Oh, you know,
here.
I am using an old draft agenda. I apologize for that. So for the record, it is item number 8. I am now informed. Transformative climate communities and community resilience centers. Ahmad and team, that is going to be a tough act to follow, but we know that you are up to it. Welcome.
Always an honor to follow great community organizers and having a discussion about how the state is working with our partners. So I welcome the follow. And I think that tees us up for a conversation with an update from the Strategic Growth Council on where we're at with Proposition 4. So let's go to the next slide, please. So California approved the climate bond Proposition 4 back in November, and this funding is going to support a lot of climate resistance and resilient programs that we've heard today. SGC is honored to continue to operate the community resilience centers and transformative climate communities within this funding structure. I'll just kind of talk a little bit louder. So as we move through this new round of funding source, our teams are continuing to build, connect, and develop strategies for our next rounds of funding. In this presentation, you'll hear a little bit about our updates, as well as how we're connecting across the core teams for implementing the climate bond and providing technical assistance. Next slide, please. Transformative climate communities and the community resilience centers are longstanding programs within the Strategic Growth Council. As a reminder, the transformative climate communities started after a lot of conversation from community organizers wanting to see more holistic funding and how do we have direct and meaningful benefit to priority populations. So we saw transformative climate communities be birthed out of community organizing from the many panelists that we heard today, and how they push the state to kind of dig a little bit deeper. Funding structures were from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund as well as the general fund appropriations. The Community Resilience Center started with a slew of of climate funding over the last couple of years through the general fund, and now we have that opportunity to move into Proposition 4 over the next couple of years. The teams, and I'm not biased in saying this, SGC has some really awesome team members that are working hard, not only internally, but across our agencies and with many of your agencies to really update our programs, align our guidelines, materials, really think about our outreach and engagement, as well as technical assistance opportunities. Let's go to the next slide. Over the course of this year, in hearing that our programs will be in Proposition 4 funding, the teams are hearing from the public who are eager to have the next rounds of funds go live. While we engage in the budget process, our teams are working together to develop what our next rounds will look like. So this is our tentative timeline. You'll see just a couple things I'll highlight and talk about through the presentation. Our draft guidelines, we're looking at the end of September, so please look out for that. We'll have a lengthier engagement and draft process for the public to engage in. And then we're looking at final guidelines, so coming back to this council for the approval of those guidelines in the spring of 2026 with a notice of funding for both programs around the same time, and then moving to awards in 2027. Again, we're working through the budget process, so a lot of this is going to be contingent on the funds that we will see in the coming months and years. Next slide, please. Some of the work that our teams are engaging in kind of go back to how our teams have looked at and kind of debriefed from each round. In that space, we heard from many applicants that were not awarded, those that were awarded, checked in with our TA providers to kind of see where we can make some changes. In that space, our teams have focused on some of our larger funding options within each grant, and that is the implementation grant. For both the transformative climate communities and the community resilience centers, these awards could be between $10 million and up to $37 million. And so in that space, they're very complex award types, and they involve a lot of concerted efforts from communities to develop the project types, as well as establish and maintain their community partnership structure. Through the award cycle, we've seen some challenges in the post-award consultation process, where that piece generally takes between 6 to 12 months to finalize, and a lot of that is underfunded or not funded at all. In this last round of funds from both round 5 of transformative climate communities and round 1 of community resilience centers, we did have some opportunity with the connecting community strategy to provide some of that post-award technical assistance that some of our grantees were able to take up on, but it wasn't nearly enough, and we did kind of walk through a lot of challenges. And so where we're at today is we're proposing kind of a change to the process where we'll have some engagement and really a larger opportunity for pre-application review and dedicated technical assistance throughout the life of the application, post-award process, and implementation process. This change that you'll see here is a shorter PAC process and then into what we're calling pre-development phase. This phase could be up to a year process and will be funded. That way we're into an executed grant agreement and allow for that partnership structure to fully establish, solidify, and then we can actually finalize some of our project requirements or fine-tune some of those project requirement commitments that we know have been challenging, especially when we're looking at funding the communities that are most impacted throughout the state. Let's go to the next slide. Some of the areas that we're also working towards is, again, looking at how we support and prioritize California tribal communities as well as disadvantaged unincorporated communities. I mentioned disadvantaged unincorporated communities as for the transformative climate communities. We saw activism and organization several years ago that actually allowed unincorporated communities to actually be viable candidates and move into an award process for implementation. So in this next round for our programs, we want to see a priority for tribes and unincorporated communities in this space. So new funding goals, increased flexibility for tribes, as well as tribal notification on the applications that we do receive. Other areas of effort, we piloted the project development grant type in transformative climate communities in this last round. That'll be a permanent grant type moving forward. We're still considering that for the community resilience centers. We're also doing some modification and alignment with the requirements that are coming out for Prop 4. Again, both of these programs are well familiar with ensuring direct and meaningful benefit to priority populations. So we're really comfortable in how we're going to align the work that we're already establishing and leading. Other updates that we're including are recommendations from grantees, and we'll continue to provide that feedback as we move into the final drafts for these guidelines and as we move through the engagement process. Go to the next slide, please. In the public engagement space for both of these programs, again, we're hearing when is the next round coming? When can we start working on these programs? So our teams, again, working diligently to kind of think how we move into a better process for application and award, started thinking about how we get there sooner. So we started with a pre-draft guideline engagement. This was a quick fact sheet that went out on some of the proposed changes. Again, these proposed changes were after a lengthy feedback session from our previous rounds of awards. We did this through this last summer. We also are looking at teasing out that draft guideline period so that we have more opportunity to engage with the public. So at least 90 days is what we're looking at right now. And then coordination amongst our programs internally as well as other programs so that we can reduce engagement fatigue, reduce the capacity constraints on staff, as well as the public who want to engage in these types of funding. This is also a call out to Proposition 4, where Proposition 4 wants to see familiarity across grant types, application, and again, what the requirements may be. So we're deeply engaged in this portion as well. And then outreach in the application period, we want to make sure that we're centering technical assistance early, often, and upfront. So we're teasing out how we do technical assistance and outreach in the coming months, but also knowing that that's going to be a given within these programs. Next slide, please. Some of the initial feedback that we received on our, again, draft guidelines materials that we sent out this summer. We had about 40 plus respondents, very, very connected to the proposals that we're making. Also, again, doubling down on technical assistance, how we have technical assistance, a call to the state agencies to have a requirement of early, often targeted, and accessible technical assistance and capacity. So again, that's very familiar what many of us have heard in our programs, and we'll continue to listen and implement those suggested updates. Recommendation for simplifying our application as well as scoring criteria. Always hearing the space where we can kind of remove and simplify areas, the scoring criteria being more familiar and transparent. So we'll work on those as well. And then our internal engagement has been really, again, looking at our council agencies, our key staff members, as well as the downline departments on areas of improvement, especially for our programs that have multiple projects strategies. So again, pulling in together a lot of our resources and our expertise across state agencies. And then internally within land use, climate innovation and the Strategic Growth Council, having very short listening sessions with subject matter experts on how we're thinking about tribal engagement and tribal priority, as well as other areas of effort. Next slide. So this kind of pulls us into some of the larger work that the Strategic Growth Council has engaged in for at least a decade. Strategic Growth Council is a leader in technical assistance. SGC actually piloted with our council agency, CalSTA and Caltrans over a decade ago, some of the first state-funded technical assistance in competitive programs, and we've been able to have iterative processes and think through different types of technical assistance. Where we're at today, we're seeing technical assistance in application, pre-application, prioritizing for disadvantaged communities, priority populations, as well as project development types and implementation and evaluation types. So we're looking to continue to extend our efforts and our technical assistance in that work and bring in some of that space to connect with other agencies. And I'll ask my colleague here to jump in on what we're doing next.
Thank you for teaming up. So a lot of that work has been done under our Community for Climate Assistance, the CASE team. They have been facilitating an interagency technical assistance work group, which creates a community practice for these practitioners Recently, we've been able to invite the Prop 4 programs into this work group. They've been able to participate in 2 meetings so far. We have received feedback recently that they're very appreciative of the space, that's very engaging and interactive. So just wanted to highlight that appreciation for our staff. We've done some initial polling of the members and some of their needs, and it's quite diverse across the spectrum. So we're going to be targeting our agendas to be able to focus specifically on application versus pre-development and implementation so that folks can have the best use of their time. Lastly, we've also been coordinating with CNRA on their technical assistance work broadly across the Prop 4. And a part of this was disseminating some questions through a survey that they were administrating. We just received some of those results back, and very broadly speaking, we have received interest in a cross-agency technical assistance program, as well as we've noted that a lot of programs are already administering their own version of technical assistance. So we'll be coordinating with CRNA to see what best next steps would be in the space. So leave it there, and I think we'll go to discussion questions.
Any questions from the council?
We have questions for you. If you all want to engage in our discussion questions or any questions to us, but really thinking about how SGC's technical expertise can be put to good use through Proposition 4 of the climate bond. And then other question would be like, how are your agencies and departments streamlining some of the grant making processes and other technical assistance processes to make it more accessible for Californians?
Any takers?
I thank you. Well, I'm definitely been involved in a lot of our TA programs at the Department of Food and Agriculture. I would just comment that we just heard in the previous panel some really good suggestions. I think considering more about language support and public outreach and engagement during this time, and considering also that all of the agencies that are implementing Prop 4 dollars are really going to be focused on similar efforts. So how can we be not inundating communities and being mindful of the points raised by the community-based organizations we just heard from on safe spaces, language, critical language capacities, but also cultural awareness and particular attention to safety and engagement. So.
Yeah, I had a similar thought about how we can connect the last 2 panels on this effort, because I mean, we heard folks talk about heat stress, Imperial Valley, like what that experience is. Like, how can we bring Prop 4 funding to develop more, community cooling centers in Imperial and have more community engage in that, process. And then internally at our agency, there are departments who have not touched this before, and I think we need to do more to bring them into the conversation, because they certainly work on, emergency response when we have a wildfire or a heat event. And so helping them connect to, these earlier prevention strategies through investments, I think will be important for us. So if we can work together on how to do that, how to bring them in earlier in these conversations, I think that'll be helpful.
Ms. Edwards.
Yes. Thank you for these questions and the overview. I think what you were tracking about the changes, it's really helpful to see, like, here's the things we learned in the past and here's how we're being responsive to those changes. And I think that the things you all are already doing in terms of the technical assistance working group and inviting all the different departments to that space is a really helpful thing. I think I've seen a lot from CNRA, an effort to kind of set some framework, some guidance, some alignment about how to administer Prop 4. And I think as much as SGC can really weigh in into those processes, because you all have been a model for so long. I mean, being someone that stood up a couple of programs on the LCI end, I modeled so much of the work after SGC. I know the federal government has done the same. And so as much as you all can really weigh in on what that guidance looks like, that's going out to all the departments administering Prop 4. I just really, really encourage because you all have set up such good frameworks for others to model. And yeah, I think that's mostly it. And really thinking about for us internally too, administering Prop 4 programs, what alignment can we have? Again, there's engagement fatigue. I think across the board, we're asking similar questions in similar spaces. So how can we just share those results and make changes together? So anyway, I'm excited to see the programs roll out.
Deputy Secretary Kurgan.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the questions and thanks for all the good thought in here. I really like to see, like Abby, the difference between the existing and the future process. I don't think this is the first time that the council has talked about the ability to, I know it's in the second question too, but how to streamline. And I think that is some of the best practices that we can reflect on, to really think critically about why we're asking for information and applications. And if it is just practice and how we've done things in the past, we may not be required to do all those same metrics and measurements, even though we're intellectually curious people and would love to know. They can be real drains on capacity or requiring, large teams of outside consultants for a community to articulate their vision. And so low barrier applications also feels like applying from some of the SGC best practices and thinking about the ways that we're able to see what the applicant wants to do, and then to make it easier. So I'm really bleeding into the next question. I get it. But I think it does kind of highlight your experience, and I think you all taking a critical eye on how to make it easier for people to apply is a big part. Similar to Thea, what I was thinking about was legibility of the opportunities throughout Prop 4. There's a lot of funding, and if I'm an applicant, I don't know which ones are best. And it just might be the first one that I see that I think is the best one. So how do we as a state team make the opportunities as legible as possible? And then making those opportunities accessible. And so some of that, again, second question, but building into templates, models, things that we've reflected on that you were talking about earlier, Adrienne, as well. Thinking about how we're getting into templates and models. So thinking about what we're doing in connecting communities and how could we carry that forward? How can we get more first-time applicants to be successful? So they may need a hint if we're talking about an MOU or a letter of support. Let's give them an example of what's been working in the past to decrease barriers to participation.
Yes, please.
Sorry. So then just the body of expertise that you have on the council and with the public members as well, given that many of the programs that SGC has are intersectional in nature, continuing to call on the council and the departments when, for example, we may have data that could help applicants answer. Let's get that up on a website. So like thinking about ways to reduce barriers in the same way by drawing upon our collective expertise and do better government in the process.
Any other comments? Just want to congratulate Amada and your team. One thing in particular caught my notice is your openness to reimagining what an implementation phase really looks like and means, and to understand that, to Chancellor Munoz's point earlier about pre-implementation costs that can be real obligations involving capital outlays, and understanding that actual funding from the grant can begin in the quote-unquote pre-development phase, and understanding that is very often a very meaningful part of the actual implementation, and to restructure this in that way is really enlightening. So just really quickly, if I can, where did that idea come from to reimagine it in this way?
So I have some team in the background if they want to add any to that, but
the TCC has actually added in some of that post-award funding, when available over the last, I believe, 2 cycles of funding. So if we have it, looking at how we can put that into implementation and carry them a little bit further. This one, I think we're actually putting that up front and acknowledging it where it would be a fully funded process. So getting him into an executed contract sooner and then being able to amend that contract gives us that flexibility to work with where we can start doing some reimbursements or advance payments in that space.
Very cool. Very innovative. Not surprised it would come from this staff. Any other questions? Did we cover public comment on this particular?
We do have a public comment in person by Laura O'Connor. If you'd like to come to the mic.
Hello. I want to appreciate, as you have already, the amazing, y'all are national heroes with this work. I think you know that, but I just want to reiterate that because I have heard that from many folks. So 2 quick questions. I was on the extreme heat with land climate innovation webinar, and it was noted that, and you don't have to answer these now, I know this isn't a Q&A period. These are my comments. Would it be possible, can you explore whether it would be possible or not for actual grant writing to be included in the TA? And that may have already been stated out loud, but almost every community that I've worked with who doesn't have full-time grant writing staff asks me this question all the time. So I just want to invite folks to consider that. And then the one that's actually why I asked about Deputy Secretary Schwartz, because I've been having this conversation with Deputy Secretary Thompson and others about the eligibility of California Native tribes and what that's based on. Currently, as you all may or may not know, the Native Heritage Commission is in the process of reevaluating the guidelines for being a California Native tribe. Whether or not you qualify and are on that contact list directly indicates whether you are eligible for this funding and all of this past funding. So millions of dollars of grants that you were or were not available. And right now what's happening is that they're in a stalled place because there's not agreement on it. My question to the extreme heat webinar was, during this period of time, which may continue well past these deadlines, again, could there be an exception made for Native tribes that have viable stipulations of why they are California Native tribes to be considered during this interim period? That's something that I think all agencies that are in California considering funding should be considering. Thank you.
That conclude public comment?
That does conclude public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. This council will now take public comment on matters that are not on the agenda. This is not a forum for dialogue with the council members. Questions posed by the public during this item cannot be substantively addressed or discussed at this meeting. Any required follow-up can be directed to our Executive Director, Ms. Erin Curtis, for follow-up answers and connections to any relevant staff. So with that in mind,
here's the reminder of how to make public comment. If members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form. We'll just give that a moment. Loading. All right, I do not see any requests for public comment at this time.
thank you, Ms. Massey. That brings us to the end of this meeting. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn in the solemn memory of our departed and beloved Deputy Secretary. Is there someone who'd like to make a motion in memory of Sabine?
I would like to make a motion in memory of Sabine Logan, Deputy Secretary for Intergovernmental Relations at Cal EPA.
Is there a second on that motion to adjourn in her memory? Thanks, everybody, for your attendance and for your work. We are adjourned.